And we're broadcasting, Cassie?
Yep, it's live now.
Okay. On behalf of the Syracuse City Council and the staff, we welcome you this evening to our business meeting. This is a public meeting that is held electronically in accordance with House Bill 5002 of the Open and Public Meetings Act amendment signed by Governor Herbert on June 25th of 2020 to a pursuant to a written determination by the chair, finding that conducting the meeting with an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present due to infection and potentially dangerous nature of COVID-19 virus. Public meetings will be held electronically for the next 30 days. The YouTube stream of the meeting can be found at the following link, and a link is given on the agenda, and also a link to this Zoom meeting. We'd invite any that are in sound of my voice to join us if we would. I'm going to call this meeting to order and ask Corinne if she would lead us in an invocation or a thought. And then Dave, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes.
Our Father in heaven, we are grateful to gather together as a city, and we pray, Father, for thy wisdom to be with us. We thank thee for the blessings that thou hast given to us. And we pray, Father, that thou wilt please bless those who are without, and that we can be the hands that do that. We pray that thou wilt please help those who are suffering from the effects of COVID, and we pray that it will be lifted from us soon. We also pray for stability tonight, and that we will do what is best for our city, and that we will treat each other with kindness and respect. And these things we humbly pray for in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
If you will join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dave, and thank you, Corinne. Now, before I ask for an adoption of the agenda, I'd like to bring Lisa in on a remote. Lisa is in an area near Parkwood and on 1475 West and Allison Way. Lisa, do you want to tell us why you're there and joining us there and give us a little information about what's going on in that neighborhood?
Yes, we have our hometown sweetheart, Sarah Fry, who is coming home from the hospital today. This is the gathering of friends and neighbors, as well as our Syracuse Fire Department, as you can see. And we have lined the streets with flags. We've got the news here. She has drawn attention from all the corners of actually the world, to be honest. So this is something that we just wanted to be a part of today, to watch her come home. She should be coming down the street any minute, but I know it's going to get loud here, so I don't want to stop everything from occurring there at the city council meeting, but I'm going to go on mute here and just let you watch it from your perspective in just a minute. She should be coming down the road in just a minute. It's just kind of a tough time to coincide with exactly when our meeting starts, but she's coming home from the hospital where she has spent the last over 3 months recovering from an incident with a drunk driver head-on collision where she has suffered extensive injuries because of that, and she and 3 other great friends, and a couple of them are from here in Syracuse as well, and all of their families that have been impacted by this. We want them to know that we love them, we support them, and as a city and city council and staff, we are behind them and want to show great support and love to them.
Thank you, Lisa. If you'll just mute and just keep showing until you can see that procession has gone by. I might also mention that Sarah's father, the week before her accident, was involved in an incident with another Syracuse resident where a neighbor in his neighborhood was involved in a motorcycle semi-accident. And actually, Sarah's father was there to perform CPR and actually saved this additional resident's life. So we're very proud of our Fry family, very proud to call them Syracuse residents, grateful for them, and Sarah and the whole family wish you well. Now, we're going to let Lisa stay there and broadcast until such time as the parade passes, but we're going to go on with our meeting. I would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda, council.
So moved.
I have a motion by Corinne. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by, was that you, Jordan?
Seth.
I think it was Seth.
Was that Seth? Okay, Seth, okay. Any discussion, council? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Thank you, Lisa. Cassie, would you record that as unanimous? Our agenda calls for item number 2, public comment. It is an opportunity to address the council regarding your concerns or ideas. We'd ask you to limit your concerns to 3 minutes. If you would state your name and place of residence. We would welcome to those of you who are in Zoom. We have had one comment, written comment, that was given to us before the 5 o'clock hour, and that comment would like to be read by those who have written it. So I'd invite Steve or Linda Wright, if you would like to join us and read your comment. We'd welcome you to make that comment and then open it up to anyone who's joining us by Zoom. Steve, there you are. I see you. You need to unmute, Steve. Steve, you're muted. There you go.
I do that all the time.
Okay.
I can't read it in 3 minutes, so let me just make a couple of comments. First of all, I want to thank the council and all its members and mayor and all the previous folks who serve on this great council and city for all you've done in the past and for the work you're doing now. I'm only going to address one issue basically, and that is, and you're well aware of it, but there are some feelings here that we feel like we probably haven't heard much of. And that's 109204B density. Unit densities and housing product types shall be distributed on site with extreme sensitivity to adjacent development type and density. Now this relates to item, I think 21 on the agenda today. Or item, yeah, I can't remember the item number now. The development at 1850, 1700 South. Many of us have just not felt like the issue of extreme sensitivity has come through to a lot of folks in Walker Estates. So I'm asking that tonight you have an opportunity to address that issue and perhaps let us know that you're sensitive to especially those people who will back up on this, this development over there and realize that that is an adjacent development. People who have moved here for the basic reason of having privacy, many of them. I'd ask you to and urge you, as a matter of fact, to think about the better distribution for that west end of that development. Smaller buildings, buffer zones are needed, but the building heights are going to disrupt and disturb a great amount of privacy for folks who, many of whom have lived a long time and are looking for some privacy over there. Once again, I appreciate all you're doing. These are hard issues. We are not against development, but it seems to me like there can be a little more extreme sensitivity and perhaps a little less need to just talk about what's going to come into the city because of it. Appreciate you all. Thank you much.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. Cassie, would you put the written content of his message in the record for this meeting?
Yes, I will.
Okay, now, those of you who are in the meeting, if you would raise your hand, if you'd go over to the participants button and you can raise your hand. I see Susan has raised her hand. Susan?
I don't have that option.
We don't have that option here. Hello.
Oh, okay.
My name is Stan Epps. We're like to talk about the development that's going on at 3000 West here in Syracuse. I'm going to kind of follow in with what Steve Wright has said. We have no any kind of input on this. When we fought the development behind my property and to the sides, we all tabled it, and you guys come up and the developer come up with buffer zones and everything to make it adequate. We live down here in a farming community, and now all of a sudden we're getting told we're going to have multiple homes is stacked on top of us. Somewhere, I think it is morally and ethically wrong to be doing this. There is no sensitivity to what's down here. This is an existing community. It's an existing neighborhood. You guys have overlaid on top of it, a bunch of stuff. And I don't think it is right or fair. I have talked with a little real estate attorney about this, and he definitely is saying this is spot zoning. You went to the developer, you've made all kinds of concessions to him so he could put in all these homes down between us, which is great for him, but how about our property rights? Last time I checked, you guys were voted in to protect my property rights. I shouldn't have to suffer this, having this many homes right next to me on farmland. We've got animals that we raise. There's a lot of flies from the cows. It's going to be right on top of them. We get no agricultural protection because we're under 5 acres. And the last time we talked on the development behind us, we were told that we had this protection. Well, we don't, because we don't have 5 acres. So I'm just asking you guys to reconsider this. Come down here, let's talk about it, not through this, but see what it really is. Look at what it really is. You're impacting everything that I do. If I sell my home, I'm going to lose property rights and everything, because I'll have to take down buildings, move buildings and everything else. That is not what it's supposed to be. My property value goes in the toilet, while his goes into the $1 million back in his hip pocket. Somewhere I feel that this is wrong, morally and ethically. So I'm right there with Steve Wright. Just let's all look at things from the standpoint of the existing people that are there and not impact them in such a manner that is harmful to them, their way of life, and their housing. And that's what we are doing. We show great support for the lady that is hit with a head on. And I agree with that. I know that we should show that kind of support to her. But where's the support for the people down here on 3000? We have fought this repeatedly, and we shouldn't have to be coming up here. I shouldn't have to come and take time off to fight this again and voice the concern of anybody and everybody down here on 3000. So, I'm not a very great public speaker. This is not the way we should be doing it. It should be done in person. Come on down. Set a time, come on down here and let's walk this property. Let's see if you agree with you should put that many homes next to me and my neighbor to the north. It's not right. That's all I've got to say. And anybody comes down here, they're going to see that I am right. It is not fair. It is not right. Here's my wife, Amy.
Cassie, would you help me with 3 minutes?
Hi, my name is Amy Epps. I live at 2933 South, 3000 West, and I believe that property is at 28 something 3000 West. It's only 2.2 acres, and they want to put high density housing, make it R3 between R1 properties, which would really be out of place there. I did write a paper here that I want to read to you. We did fight hard for the buffer. They did put in the buffer for shoreline behind us. On the other 3 sides of that property are R1. So it would really be out of place. That's why it would be important for you guys to drive down and look at that property. Let's see if, and also I feel like that if there's compensation being offered by the city and some of the, I don't know how many people are in construction there, but it's kind of a conflict of interest. This is spot zoning. Let's see. We have buildings right up to the property line. I know that the Planning Commission said that those would be grandfathered in, but it will limit us on our property, or like barns and things like that, and how far away from the property line we could build them. And we only have a little over an acre of property, an acre and a third. We do have roosters. We have cows. Cows get slaughtered for meat. Roosters are crowing. Like my husband said, there's flies everywhere. What's that? We love it. Yeah, we love it down here. I think it would be like a sore thumb sticking out to have that kind of density, high density down here. I beg you guys to keep it R1 and keep it like the original plan, and not step on the feet of the existing residents down here. Please drive down here and look. You guys will understand what we mean. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Oh,
Suzette.
and here is Sarah Booth. Or Susan Booth. Sorry.
Hi, my name is Susan Booth, and I live at 2853 South, 3000 West, next to Mr. Russell's property that he's developing. Pretty much everything that has been said tonight is what I was going to say as well. My concern is I do want to live here the rest of my life, however long that will be. But someday, whoever takes over my property, I would like to have it be able to be either developed or stay the way it is. In order for it to be developed, I would need to have a stub road next to my property, or have the road that Syracuse City is going to put in, have that right next to me and Mr. Russell. That's only fair because otherwise you're preferring one property owner over another, which is the spot zoning. Another thing that has come up is the slaughter of animals. 2 weeks ago, we had 4 steer that was slaughtered in my property. And I don't think the neighbors are going to love that process. And like you say, it does draw a lot of flies. I don't know how close these houses will be to my property if it is approved, but it would be nice to be able to sit down and talk with someone. No one's ever approached me about what my opinion is or any consideration because I'm right next to the property. I believe that's really all I have to say. Everything was said very well before me, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Here's
Keith?
Brent Burgess.
Keith,
Hello,
Keith,
everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak for a few moments. My wife and I live across the street and just down one lot from the proposed development. When we moved here a little over 20 years ago, we acquired an acre of ground from my father and mother. And at the time they were in Davis County. When we developed, we ended up having to annex into the city, as well as my father's entire 9 acres of farm. He was forced to annex into the city because of our deciding to develop and get water from Syracuse City. My point being, we played by the rules when we came down here. We have an acre lot, so we're just like the subdivision that's going to be affected by this development. So what we're asking is that you be sensitive to their needs and to what they already have there, and don't try to start sticking roads and things in places that start to force them out, which is what I see as I drive up through the neighborhoods, up through West Point, Clinton, West Haven, all the way up. You see these housing developments coming out like fingers in every direction, and farms just folding up because they get forced out. And that's kind of what's going on here, is we're sticking a finger of Syracuse City through here in a way that is going to make it more and more uncomfortable to be able for them to live their way of life. Now, another thing that I want to mention, and I'll close up, and that is that when you look at the city's website, you see a beautiful picture of a bridge up at Jensen Park and the appearance of open space. So we've had this welcoming this welcoming website that would suggest that we believe in open space and a comfortable community. And yet the way we're developing, you would think that we don't believe in that at all. We believe in higher and higher densities, taller and taller buildings, and heading in what I think is the wrong direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so my name is Bonnie Burgess, live at 3008 South, 3000 West in Syracuse, Utah. So I want to read mine tonight because my head is not focusing very well. So I want to share an analogy, since the mayor is fond of stories and analogies, and data and facts seem to be falling on deaf ears. I recently watched the Lorax with my high school biology class and could not help but think about the Onceler, an eager businessman whose self-interest and desire for personal economic growth destroyed an entire environmental community. A line from the original Dr. Seuss story says, "People don't understand what happens when things get out of hand." The proposed zoning change from R1 to R3 for the Tuscan development will be taking from the surrounding neighbors and result in a loss of lifestyle. Just like the Barbalut Bears and the Lorax, the surrounding neighbors will need to find a new place to live to have their current lifestyle. The farming and raising of large animals will be infringed upon by the R3 designation. This is taking of our rights that we currently have on our land. Like the Lorax, I am speaking for the neighborhood to save our lifestyle and protect our environment. While the city planner may argue that the new shoreline development or the new development that is going in behind from the shoreline is high density, the shoreline developer changed the lot size on the edge to create a buffer zone to protect our agricultural lifestyle and the R1 lot size. So all of the ones that are next to the properties are R1. So even though that this shoreline development is a high density area in some places, the lots next to the current homes are all R1. This lot was part of the buffer zone that was originally created by the CW Lands, but for some reason, Mr. Russell pulled out of that. So this should be designated in that R1 buffer zone that was given to the current residents. The focus of my class lesson was on sustainable development. Allowing developers like the Onceler is not sustainable. As a city council, do not be a Onceler. Do not continue to support the Oncelers. At the end, the Onceler shows the boy the unless, a single word, a faraway thought, something that somebody ought. You ought to care for our neighborhood and our rights. Don't put farmers last. Our open space and land provide homes for migratory birds, pheasants, raptors, such as the falcons, hawks, and owls, and food for our own families. And for the food for our families, I want to show you the picture of what we did last week. This is Susan Booth's backyard. And so you can see on there that this is the red barn that is on Mr. Russell's. And there are 3 cows in that picture. There were 4 cows that were slaughtered at that time. So this is very important to our family and our food. I believe the growth of Syracuse is not sustainable at the current rate of high density housing that is coming into the town. Do not be allowing the greed of a single Onceler to take away the rights of those who already live here in this area. This rezone is about property rights and value, not size of the lots or a contractor putting in a road that would connect to the shoreline subdivision. This does not show extreme sensitivity. I thank Steve Wright for his earlier comments about the sensitivity and listening to the citizens. Do not allow this rezoning to go from R1 to R3. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bonnie. Keith, I'd like to apologize to you and offer you some time. Do you want to visit with it? And for the rest of you, we allow the chair to control the meeting.
Okay. Yes, I appreciate that. What I've got is I've been trying to wrap my head around the my 2050 zoning change and trying to understand how a medium density overlay got placed across our R1, A1 community. It means that we're zoned right out of it. In other words, if I want to develop anything, that I'm not appropriate to what I'm already doing. That's what's causing this difficulty. We have a medium density overlay across the top of us. We have a long-standing R1, A1 community that was developed by the Clark family years ago. So that's got to be resolved somehow. And I looked at the options to do that, but I'd have to pay a lot of money and then have it reviewed by the same group that approved it in the first place. So, in respect to that, I second what my neighbors have said, but also make the statement that as I look at the city rules, the proposal that is before us would not meet the approval standards that would be considered, that should be considered. It would not, most certainly not be harmonious with overall characteristics of existing development. It would be relying solely on a flawed overlay zone not compatible with the existing neighborhood land use. It would severely affect adjacent properties, setting up a non-compatible usage with large animal, agricultural, immediately next to density housing. This would also place restrictions on property due to city codes. The adequacy of facilities such as storm drain and irrigation waters have already delayed the R1 development across the street, and most assuredly would affect in this. So I would ask you to give us a chance, get the planner to get with the developer, the neighbors, see if we can come out with something. We're not opposed to development with, but obviously with that zoning overlay, there's no fair way to do that because we don't even show up in it. I've got an A1 property, an R1, and an A10, and the zoning overlay shows me as medium density. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Keith, for the record, would you state your name and address?
Keith Burgess, 2761 South, 3000 West. I have property within 300 foot of the proposed development.
Thank you, Keith. Mr. Don Knighton. Mr. Knighton, are you still with us?
He's muted.
Is he muted?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Don, can you unmute yourself?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, but you need to be a little louder. You're muted. You're still muted. There you go.
I would like to talk about the project that is on 1700 and about 1600 South or 1600 West. We've been trying to get a meeting with the developer so that we could talk over some issues between us and Walker Estates. And I haven't been able to get that meeting set up. He said he didn't get the email where we communicated back and forth. We're going to meet later on this week to discuss the development, things that we feel that are needed to help us feel a little more secure with his project. And there are also some other things that I think we need to address that would reflect on the project itself and how the city code is administered. Things like parking. I've had an issue with parking since day one that this project has been proposed. It actually says that they're going to be using tandem parking. Why is tandem parking even allowed? It says it's only used for our or residential detached or duplexes. It's not allowed anywhere else. I'm assuming that you don't consider this either of those as it's a mixed use development. The width of the roads that are going in to this development don't meet the requirements that are listed in section 1040, which says if you don't have the required widths, you have to add an extra parking stall for each 2 units. I've been asking that question of the city to answer why. I haven't got an answer back yet, other than they say 1040 does not apply to this development. But yet there's a reference in 1092 that says 1040 is referenced by 1092 in the parking ordinance. Someone needs to straighten out these ordinances so they make sense. The state says you guys can't continue on this way with ordinances that don't comply with each other. There's a lot of conflict between them. And everybody that I talk to, it kind of falls on deaf ears. So with that, I'll turn the time over to whoever else.
Okay, Don, could you state your name and place of residence in Walker Estates?
Don Knighton, I live at 1795 West, 1825 South.
Okay, thank you. I see Paula Knighton with her hand up.
I do. Okay. One of the most difficult challenges to planning more intense community development has been the protection of living conditions in adjacent neighborhoods, especially preserving the privacy, solar access, and character of adjacent residences. Maintaining livability in nearby residential areas is critically important. When discussing the MXD development west of Walker Estates, you have already heard the appeals referencing the city's own words about extreme sensitivity, unit density distributed with extreme sensitivity to adjacent development type and density, and units per acre shall be tapered down. You've heard all that. You know all that. The physical impacts of the new multi-story development to adjacent residences generally rise from two sources: ground level activities such as parking and services, and upper story impacts affecting privacy, sunlight, and visual qualities. Syracuse Code 1050-030C states that the city will provide adequate light, air, and privacy. Privacy is a key word now I'm trying to emphasize, to meet the ordinary or common requirements of happy, convenient, and comfortable living of the inhabitants of Syracuse, and to foster a wholesome social environment. Height limits are important measures to protect privacy and views, to promote the adequate provision of sunlight, air, and visual safety. You are not just considering 3-story apartments abutting 2- and 3-story residential homes. You are considering 3-story apartments abutting single-story residential homes. How can you mitigate height invasion of privacy with buffer zones and fences? I repeat, think about it. How can you mitigate height invasion of privacy with buffer zones and fences? Walker Estates was approved by the city approximately 20 years ago as a 55-plus PRD. The intent was to provide a secluded, private, quiet neighborhood where older people can feel safe and be active. Walker Estates is unique and cannot be treated the same as general residential area with through streets and varying home heights. The residents of Walker Estates are currently labeled vulnerable in this pandemic. Vulnerable also describes how we feel as the city we trusted to, and I quote 100530, preserve and promote the health, safety, convenience, order, and general welfare. We purchased our homes with the intent of spending the rest of our lives in our homes, surrounded by safe, quiet, friendly neighborhoods, maintaining the area with pride of ownership. We did not envision living out our retirement years with the invasion of privacy from neighbors living 3 stories above us, or the ground level noise from anything but standard residential. The decisions you make tonight are not just decisions on paper. These decisions impact the lives of real people every day of our lives for as long as we live in our current dream homes. We are reeling from the prospect of loss of privacy and the increase in noise and lack of security through transience of our neighbors. We are mourning the loss of our dream homes and environment. As you make your decisions tonight, please remember that these decisions impact the lives of real people every day of our lives. Thank you.
Anyone else joining us that would like to speak to the council? If you'd raise the purple hand so I could see you. Cassie, can you help me scan?
I
don't see any other raised hands, Mayor.
Thank you, Cassie. Hearing and seeing none, I'll close public comment. We will have another period at the end of this session to hear items that have not been brought up here that maybe have been raised during the discussions of this evening. So we appreciate your comments, and we have listened, and we understand that lives are being impacted. Council, let's move to item 3, the approval of minutes. We have a set of minutes for September 8th, 2020 of business meeting. The minutes of September 22nd, 2020, our work session. And then September 22nd, 2020, a special business meeting that we held. Do you have any corrections or modifications to those minutes that you would like Cassie to be aware of?
Not today.
Not today. Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Motion to accept the said minutes.
Thank you, Corinne. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Lisa. Any further discussion, council? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, Cassie, would you mark that as unanimous? Council, we have 2 items on the consent agenda that can come out of our work sessions in the past. One of them is the authorized administration to execute payback agreement related to the installation of infrastructure improvements by the Field subdivision. And B, proposed resolution R 2034, amending the Syracuse City Personal Policies and Procedure Manual. Are there any of those that you'd like drawn out of consent? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Motion to approve the items on the consent.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Corinne. Any further discussion, council? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Cassie, would you record that as unanimous? Now I'm going to turn some of the time over to Cassie Brown, our city recorder, for a state mandated presentation of arguments for and against the general obligation bond that is proposed by the city. Cassie, would you like to do that now?
Yes, I'll go ahead and introduce that. So the Transparency of Ballot Propositions Act, which is included in Title 56 of the state code, requires this public meeting and an opportunity for public input after receiving a presentation of the arguments for and against the bonds. That information was included in a voter information pamphlet that was mailed to all households in the city the end of last week. I believe they should be at all homes now. But we are required to just read the for and against arguments into the record and then allow any public input. And Mayor, do you still want me to proceed with reading both of those arguments?
Yes, would you proceed with reading both?
Okay, so I'll read the argument for the bonds first. Where Syracuse farmland once produced onions, we now produce children. From 1880 until 1980, our population grew by just a couple thousand. Within the last 30 years, we have grown by 10 times that amount and expect to again double our current population in the next 20 years. We're growing exponentially, and we have our rich familial heritage to thank. Our community tapestry holds a fondness for recreation. The Parks Development Master Plan has adopted the ratio of 5.6 acres of parkland per 1,000 residents. Currently, our city has 151 acres of developed parkland, which means with our population over 31K, we are already 35 acres short. We have reached capacity in our Parks and Recreation Department. Without the proposed regional park, we will shortly have to turn families away from city-sponsored recreation, as well as limit offerings as our population increases. So will the need for programmable and open space. We must do more to preserve land for our present and future needs. The proposed regional park will be built on 50 acres at 2000 West and Gentile. Some of its amenities include several full-size athletic fields, basketball and pickleball courts, a large playground, pavilions to accommodate parties and family reunions, a grand performance pavilion, connecting walking and running trail systems, and shaded seating and eating areas. Previously labeled a white elephant because of lack of fertility, this soil will be built up and enjoy line of sight open space as it will neighbor the Nature Conservancy District. From beginning to end, it is expected to be completed within approximately 3 years. The completion date is also expected to coincide with work on the West Davis corridor, which will provide easy access and invite visitors to our community to participate in tournaments and events. With the loss of sales tax revenue from RC Willey, financial sustainability is imperative to our city. Future employers look for amenities that attract employees, and this park will guide that investment. We would like to pay for the park with a combination of city funds, personal and private donations, grants, and bonding. The most recent estimate for the park is approximately $33 million. The maximum amount we propose bonding for is $26 million. We will continue seeking all other means to fund this park while in the process of development, and any funds gathered will be used to either decrease the amount we bond for or pay off the bond early. By starting now, we hope to curb the loss of value to funding ratio that inevitably occurs with inflation. We propose combining the regional park bond with the current bond used for our city building, police and fire stations, and public works building. For about $450 more per month, we will distribute the costs more equitably for these facilities across current and future households. This park is vital to Syracuse, and we hope our citizens will see the wisdom in proceeding with the bond. And just at the bottom of that statement, it indicates the authors are Mayor Mike Gailey, Councilmember Lisa Bingham, Councilmember Corinne Bolduc, Councilmember Jordan Savage, and Councilmember Seth Teague. And then I'll go into the argument against bonds. Syracuse does need more park space to accommodate the needs of the citizens in the city, both young and old. The proposed 50-acre park is well planned to meet the needs of all citizens. The argument is not against the park, but how to fund it. Bonding for the park may significantly handicap the city's ability to provide for basic services. The city has struggled for more than a decade under sizable bonds to pay for vital service buildings such as City Hall, the fire station, and more. The need for a new water tower could only be solved with yet another bond. All city bonds could be retired in just a few short years. However, this proposal extends the current level of bonding out through 2042. Future infrastructure bonds could end up at a higher rate because the city has extended its debt. This bond tax is relative to your property value, reflecting approximately a 25% increase. Ideally, it would end. None of your current city officers are expected to be in office in 2042, so no person can promise the tax will end there. It is a common practice of government to repurpose such a tax allocation beyond its purpose because the citizens have grown accustomed to paying it over 20 plus years. After enduring the tax, it will be presented as money you already pay, applying the same amount to a different use. Effectively, you are voting for another large tax increase with no end. Fundraising should have happened before taxing the population. Syracuse began the process of planning for this park 5 years ago. With the first indication of a large cost for the park, the plan was effectively put on the shelf. Years of fundraising should have taken place before now. To only start the process of fundraising in all the various forms after putting this tax measure on the ballot is a disservice to the people. How much could be raised to offset your burden? Which sources could relieve this tax burden? What options are available to lower the cost of the park? This park is over-designed, not in terms of services, but in terms of engineering. Because the land has a history of being considered infertile, the engineering jumped to the assumption that a minimum of 8 feet of fresh soil is needed across all 50 acres. It was suggested when planning began that some science be applied to seek alternatives, which has yet to happen. In the initial cost estimate, over $6 million was added for unknown costs. Will that extra $6 million be spent wisely? We don't know, so why start by funding it? Value engineering efforts could bring the cost down significantly and should happen before asking the people to fund the full amount. The park will be a great benefit to the city. Better planning before taxing is the responsible way to govern. Funding this project should not begin with your wallet, but be the last resort. And the author of this statement is Councilmember Dave Mon. That's all, Mayor.
Thank you, Cassie. I would open this up to anybody joining us in the Zoom meeting if you would like to make a comment. And then I would invite Dave and Seth, perhaps representing those two opinions, if you would maybe have a closing comment if you'd like. So anybody who is joining us, if you would like to make comment, we would encourage it. If you would go to and raise your hand in the participants panel. I see.
The only reason I'm sticking on is.
Yeah, you have Josh Hughes and RC are both raising their hands.
So I don't know if you can see that I raised I don't have a raised hand.
You do.
Yeah.
Let me recognize Josh Hughes.
Mayor, if you can just,
Oh,
sorry, Josh.
Oh,
No, you're
There's,
fine.
yeah, it's Josh
there
Hughes.
are
Oh,
other people that are unmuted, and there is so much feedback and noise going on. I don't think the audio is going to be very clear. So anyone
And I-
that's not speaking needs to mute.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, Mayor. I appreciate it. At first, when I heard about the park bond, I wasn't too sure about what I thought because in general, I'm against, I'd say government debt. But as I got, thinking about it, I think it's really an essential thing. I was taught that maybe with private finance, maybe you only go into debt for a home or for an education, for only the essential things. And quite frankly, I think a park is an essential thing to a city to go into debt for. If we were to try and save little by little, I don't think we could save enough as a city in our parks budgets to even keep up with the price increases that would come with waiting to do this park. Also, I think about the fact that if private sector would fill this need, I would prefer not to see the government do it, but parks is one of those things that simply won't ever be a need fulfilled by the private sector. There's just, it's just not something that ever be profitable privately. And so really it's one of those things that if the government doesn't do it, who else will? And so anyway, I think it is an essential thing for us to do. Just a couple of things that about those arguments. I think it was a little bit misleading to basically make it sound like in the con argument that property value property taxes would go up by 25%. I know that's only a small portion of the property tax that would go up by 25%, but I think the way that it's written, most people might assume that their actual property taxes are going to go up by 25%, which obviously isn't the case. Also, just a comment on fundraising. I think going to the private sector for fundraising is great, but I don't think the private sector ever wants to be the first donation. They want to know that the plan is going to happen, that it's imminent, that there's already most of the funding there. And then I think you will be a lot more successful getting the last of the money donated. And then finally, I would just say, maybe going to the last argument of the con argument, maybe it's not a perfect plan, maybe it is over-engineered, but there's time to still work through some of those things. I think a logical first step is to secure the fundraising, and then we can fine-tune the plan from there. But I'm definitely in support of it, and I appreciate you guys doing this for our community.
Thank you, Josh. Bonnie, I might mention if you're on the phone, if you'll push 9 on your phone, we don't see an image anymore for you.
Yes, thank you.
I've got mine, thanks.
I'll take water. Thank you.
Can I go?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So my biggest question is that I disagree a little bit with Josh Hughes on that the money going into debt for this and also the future costs. So we're going to have a bond that will raise the money that will pay for it initially up front. But what about the future maintenance costs? We talk about how we want to have HOAs because they're going to pay for maintenance, which the city doesn't have to do. Who's going to pay for all the maintenance on this? And is there going to continue to be an increase in taxes to fund this? And how is it going to be cared for? And how is it not going to be a continued burden for the citizens? So if you guys would address that in your discussion, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. RC Nazario.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Good.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I just want to bring up, I've coached Little League football 7 years now. And the importance of having a park like something like this is huge for kids. I understand there's costs involved, but does it outweigh the importance for kids to gain friendships that are long lasting? Just recently, your junior mite team, I'm not sure if you guys know, the 2 junior mite teams in Syracuse went to West Haven to play in what is called Oktoberfest, which both teams won that Oktoberfest from Syracuse. And we don't have a park to where we can bring other cities in. We're always going somewhere else. For example, like the other tournaments were played in Kaysville Park. I think even a little more down south. And all that money, if you guys were into sports and you go on the Saturday morning to the Layton Park, that thing is jam packed with people that are going to your restaurants, to your gas stations close by and spending who knows amounts of money just for sports related. And not only, I mean, my oldest son has the best set of friends because of sports. I think we're looking past what sports bring to kids, especially at this time of need. I mean, there's too much online gaming, no face-to-face no more. And that's what a park brings, is that structure to young kids where they don't get in trouble because of sports. I mean, so that's kind of where I'm at there. I appreciate your guys' time, but I really am for, and I think $4 or $5 a month, I mean, is huge. I'll pay double that to have a park at that size and just to bring this stuff around, because these kids need something like that for sure. So I appreciate you guys' time.
Thank you, RC. I might mention that if you're viewing this through Zoom, you need to go to the participants at the bottom and click on that, and then you have the opportunity to raise your hand. I see Don Knighton's hand raised.
Yes, I would like to ask a couple of questions about the park. Those being things like wetlands mitigation. I noticed that the city doesn't really participate in that anywhere. Do they have an agreement with the federal government that they do not have to do that? The 404 permit usually requires you to talk to the Corps of Engineers to mitigate that type of stuff. Does Syracuse have a wetland bank somewhere that they just transplant the wetlands that are on this site over to the other site? What about things like other uses for 50 acres in a place that's close to an off-ramp in Syracuse? Is a park the best thing to put in an area where maybe industrial could be developed or commercial could be developed? Syracuse is running out of land for locations where you can actually build a project that would contribute to the taxes and not take away from the taxes within the city. How come we're not entertaining those things on 50 acres? I know that the park, we're behind on parks per capita based on a city ordinance that was self-prescribed. Is there any state ordinance that says we have to have that amount of park for the number of people? Or are we overdoing it? There's lots of parks in the city that seem to be unused for a good portion of the day. Why don't we do a better job of managing that? I'm done.
Thank you, Don. Appreciate that. Let me come down the list. Rachel Page.
Hey, this is actually her husband, Matt.
Hello, Matt.
But I will talk like Rachel if you want. I just want to make it clear, I'm not against parks in general. I think everything that's been said about the benefit that they provide to the citizenry is all good, and I agree with that. Where I think this particular and the approach that was taken with moving forward at this park, the way that we moved forward was actually not the proper way, and I feel like we're trying to pull some wool over the citizens' eyes on how we're moving forward with this. The debt burden to the city that this is going to bring is going to extend well into our children's years, and fair on how we're financing this park, especially at a time when the world is in financial turmoil and the Fed is printing money like crazy, and yet we're willing to enter more and more debt. I just don't think it's a wise decision to be making, to be spending all of our reserves on a park. I think the placement is poor for a huge complex like this, where you'll have huge mosquito problems which are just going to add to the displeasure of this park. I think the fact that we rushed it to get it on this ballot, knowing full well that there's another initiative by the county to raise taxes again, property taxes again next year. We know that it's a burden to have both. And yet we pushed it this year because it's easy for people to say, well, it's only $45 this year. Well, next year it's going to be and then the next year it'll be another $45. And the tax increases don't stop. And we need to have a different mindset of, instead of burdening the taxpayers, we need to start trimming the belts of the government, because you just can't keep spending and spending. There's got to be some control on it. So I think the premise of the reason why we're pushing forward this park as quickly as we are, I think the citizens deserve to know that it's because another tax increase is coming next year. And I think that should have been made known to the public as well.
Thank you, Matt. Nick Coleman.
There we are. How you guys doing tonight?
Good.
Good. Wow. So I just want to say thank you guys for having me. So I am the chair that's overseeing trying to get this park built. Just give you guys a little bit of a background is in myself, I've been in Parks and Rec for about 20 years. I've seen facilities like this go up, prosper within the community, small community, and right now I'm actually in West Valley City. So to give you a little rundown, I feel that this park, this sports complex regional park, has been a long time coming. And I think a lot of us can agree upon that. I've heard people say, well, PD needs funding down the road, fire needs funding. Well, what people don't understand is let's be proactive and prevent crime and prevent, people overweight and stress, and actually, build a park. A lot of people, the data will show you that when you build a park, people are active, they're not going out creating crime, right? You're either doing one or the other. You're either being active or you're doing something you shouldn't, right? You can attest that tagging, graffiti, minor vandalism has increased due to COVID. And why is this? We shut down our gyms. We shut down our parks. We close everything down. Kids need something to do. Adults need something to do. Seniors need something to do. And to be honest with you, I know the police chief and the fire chief, they can't comment on this, but if you ask them, I know they would probably say 110%, let's build a park, because it's going to help them in the long run. Some things I want to add, first and foremost, is our citizens deserve this park. This is not, to me, it's not a cost, it's more an investment into the people that live here, that work here. Parks, you could go anywhere with this park, from playing catch with your kid, seniors walking, playing pickleball, which we know that's a very fast growing sport. We could have lacrosse tournaments, soccer tournaments. I know UYSA, girls fast pitch, travel ball. The gentleman with the Syracuse Storm, I should turn my picture off because I actually referee youth football, and you might have had me on the sideline. I have to tell you what, our youth football program, spot on. Gentlemen and ladies across the board. I've had issues with other areas, but I have not had one issue with Syracuse on my sideline. I'll be over in Morgan. I think it's Syracuse Gold in Morgan this weekend for the playoffs. I got that game, so good luck in that one. But that's another thing. We don't have a home field. I reffed in Layton. I reffed in Kaysville. We packed the house, and we travel that way in our youth football. What a great, thing to say, hey, this is our field. Not only in football, but like lacrosse, the travel organizations, even youth baseball and things of that nature. I heard one thing about dropping the dirt. So I want you guys to write this down. You can Google this. Morgan Sports Complex, Destin, Florida. That's where I started out in Parks and Rec. I ran that sports complex. If you're lucky, you might see the picture of the beach, and about 250 yards up is actually right across the highway is the sports complex.
Nick, I'm going to give you 15 more seconds.
We had to drop 3 feet worth of dirt, and it was the best investment that city has ever had. and they've been thriving off it. Fundraising, great idea, but I've never seen a fundraise pay for a park. I've only seen bonds. Bonds will pay for the park. Fundraising is great. It'll help benefit it. Maintenance cost, you actually cover it through rentals. Adult soccer on Sundays, pavilion rentals.
Nick, I'm gonna ask you to suspend. I know you're excited. That's great. Dave, could I offer you 3 minutes as a rebuttal, and then also
Hi, Dave.
You know, Mayor, I really don't have a lot to say because I think that the argument that I put out there speaks for itself. I'm concerned about the situation. I'm concerned about our economy. I'm concerned about the timing. There's still a lot of people in our city who are reeling through the COVID situation and the impacts that it's had to their families financially. I don't think this is the best time to be asking for people for extra money, and quite disappointed that I hear, not tonight from anyone, but I've had several phone calls of people saying my neighbors are shaming me that I can't afford this and that I should just do it for the kids and I should suck it up and find some extra money so that I can put in for this park. That's not who I thought we were as a city. I think that there are people who are going to struggle with this. We have a lot of seniors in our community who live on fixed incomes. Some of them are pretty tight. We have people in this community who have not recovered from layoffs and shutdowns. And hopefully that will work out for everyone. And I pray for them all that they'll be blessed. But to just say, well, you need to find a way so that the rest of us who can afford this can be blessed with this park, I think is shameful. And so I want to build this park. I believe we can build this park, but I do not believe that we should start by just saying how much can we put that burden on our citizens. We should find out how much we can relieve that burden from our citizens first. That's my perspective on it. The citizens vote, it's up to them, and we'll go forward either way.
Thank you, David. Seth?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Seth Teague, I'm a Syracuse resident. I just wanted to share a few thoughts on some of the comments that have been made. Appreciate all the statements made to support the park. I think they're spot on. In regards to the cost, there's been a lot that's been said about the cost of this park and wild estimates north of $50 million. And I know that some of our council members have been a part of the design of this park, and we've built a very premier park, but that doesn't mean we can't scale that back to some extent if that's what we get to after fundraising efforts. Also, I've spent a lot of time out in the community talking to individuals about this and kind of cheering on fundraising efforts on behalf of the council when we have a fundraising committee chair that has not done any of that. And so it's been hard for me because this has not been something new. It's been on the docket on our side for 5 years, and nobody has told anybody that they cannot fundraise. That has not been told, because you can't tell somebody they can't go out and spread the word. The problem is, which is what I experienced when I went out, is people say, I would love to support this. I just need you to come forward and say that the city is committed as far as a citizenry, that we have bought into this concept, and that is through the bond. That does not mean we have to spend the entirety of the bond. If we go back for the next 3 years and fundraise, and we apply for grants, and we build up additional park impact fees. We currently have $5 million in savings set aside for this project. We can reduce that burden on our citizens. Right now it's $4.50 approximately for the average home in Syracuse. As more homes are built, that burden is reduced and spread out evenly across all the new homes. And so that $4.50 average is spread out further. If your home is worth more than that or less than that, it varies slightly up and down. However, if your property values go up, which is a misconception, your cost does not go up, your rate goes down, which more evenly splits it out. So that's not something that escalates over time for you. I think that's been a big misconception. I think this gives us the opportunity to improve the quality of our other fields out there, because we have access to rotate and rest our fields. and give the turf more options over time. I think that when we say that it was a ruse or something, or pulling the wool over the eyes, I think that is a really a big disservice to our citizens. Right now, the best litmus test for whether the citizens want this is to put this out on a bond during a presidential election cycle, when we have 15,000 voices that are going to tell us yes or no. If they say no, we go back to the drawing board. If they say yes, we move forward. If we went next year in a municipal election, we'd have what, 5,000, 7,000 voices at most. And so we would be authorizing a big bond for a small representative group of citizens. I don't think that's fair. We were talking about doing it next year because the bond for the school board was this year originally. And then when the school board switched off to next year, we flipped it to this year to give our citizens that opportunity to look at this bond in and of itself, vote with their conscience, vote with what they think is right. And this is the right answer. I think this bond will give us a great opportunity and amenity.
Thank you. Cassie, does that fulfill our requirement under the state code?
Yes, it does, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on, council. Let's move to, I think I would like to begin with Brody on the mosquito abatement, but I'd like Corinne to help us also understand that. So Brody, can you begin, and then Corinne, can you bring us up to date?
Sure thing.
Cassie, can you allow me to share my screen on?
Oh yeah, hang on one sec. I think I put the wrong one on there. Hold on one sec.
Okay. Well, that's getting started. What you have in your packet is a draft agreement with the Mosquito Abatement District. And what we've done here is put together something where the city would remit the $1,739 that the Mosquito Abatement District has requested for qualified expenses under the CARES Act. What we've included in the agreement is some protection if by chance they made expenses that were deemed to be non-qualified for under the CARES Act. The city would be on the hook to reimburse the state or federal government. So what this agreement does is it says, okay, if that happens, we'll reimburse the state or federal government, but Mosquito Abatement District, you're going to reimburse us. So they would agree to that up front. And then, let me start this up. And then it also provides a provision here if there's further assistance, as this pandemic drags on, if there's further assistance that they request, they can just submit a request and we can bring it before the council for review and approval. And that can just be sort of kind of attached to this agreement. So we don't have to have a separate agreement if they have another request. So the way this could play out, I've included in the packet the current CARES Act funding plan of the city, the summary of it, and also what a possible amended plan would look like if you wanted to move forward with this agreement. Basically, we would take the $1,700 out of the PPE, the personal protective equipment line item that we would use for city staff and customers. So we think there'll be enough in there that $1,700 amount won't jeopardize that. So,
Corinne, would you add your comments there? What's your insight?
Yes. First of all, I just wanted to let you know that this contract was read at the last mosquito abatement meeting. Sorry, my report I haven't sent that out yet. But they voted to accept all of the terms that were in the contract. And they're really pleased because ourselves and Centerville were the ones on the ball here. So good job, cities. We did good. And also just to make sure that you know that all of these are direct costs. None of these are indirect costs for the COVID expenses. This is for PPE that was required by them, wipes, sprays, all that. And then, one thing that people just don't think about when you have a bunch of seasonal workers out riding their bikes and treating standing water and on ATVs and so on, they need to use the restroom in the middle of the day. And so we actually had to get honey buckets and have them on trailers and stuff because, one of the policies was to lock down all of the public restrooms. And so, some of these expenses are kind of unexpected, but they were directly related to the rules or the regulations that were set forth by the health department. And we really appreciate the city stepping up to help out with that unexpected budget hit. And overall, it's pretty small comparative. So thank you very, very much, though, because it's kind of hard to make your budget when you have something like a pandemic hit. So thank you.
Council, I'd open this up to open discussion.
I was just going to say that I think this is a reasonable ask, and I think that these dollars are designed for these types of efforts, and so I have no concerns here.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Yeah, one thing you don't want to do in the middle of a pandemic is allow the West Nile or something like that to get out of control by not keeping the people working in the mosquito abatement safe. So this is a very reasonable ask. Thank you for being succinct in the actual costs and covering the immediate costs. And so I think this is very appropriate.
David, any comment?
I'm not concerned. I think that this is appropriate.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to allow the administration to engage in an interlocal agreement.
So moved.
I have a motion from Corinne. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Lisa. Any further discussion, council? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Cassie, would you record that and authorize the administration to proceed? Steve, would you give us a little insight? I understand that we can hear both of these items in the same hearing. Could you just explain what we're talking about, and then I'll open that to public hearing?
Sure. So what we're talking about is the stormwater impact fee analysis and the impact fee facilities plans. Frequently, we have been updating these over the last few years, mainly because of development happening so quick in the city. So this is an amendment to our stormwater IFA and IFFP to actually bring forward 5 additional projects on their master plan. So in our master plan, it calls out all the future projects we need to do. In our impact fee analysis, it condenses it down into the plans or the projects we think we're going to do in the next 5 to 7 years. And so that's what we're amending tonight, is actually pull some of those projects forward that weren't originally planned to happen in that 5 to 7 year window, with development happening this quick. So on this plan, you'll see those projects are pulled forward. Those projects come with a cost, and that is why our impact fee is proposed to go up from $73.98 per acre to $86.97 per acre. And again, this is a cost borne by developers. It is just a cost that we can charge developers that have impact on our city when they develop new homes or businesses. And I'll leave it at that. I did put a comparative in the packet there as well, which you guys usually like to see. If you have any questions, let me know.
Okay. Do you want to talk about the fee schedule too?
Sure, really quick. So along with this, because we're talking about a fee change, we're going to propose a fee schedule amendment as well. Because if the council passes this tonight, there is a 90-day waiting period because of fee increases, and that is by law. So it wouldn't go into effect until January of next year. Also, a lot of times when we have fee schedule amendments, I just have items that have been placed in queue to be approved. There is one proposed amendment besides this to our culinary water hydrant meters. So we actually purchase these and then rent them out to developers to use as they develop new subdivisions. The cost actually to us to buy that fire hydrant meter has gone up to $1,700. So we're proposing to change that from $1,200 to $1,700. That fee is a rental agreement. So a lot of times developers will pay that up front and then they get a portion of it back when they turn it back in, minus any user fees that they have and the time they have it checked out. And that fee would be effective immediately if you guys pass that tonight.
All right, I'm hoping that that explanation has helped those of us that have joined the meeting. I now declare that we're in public hearing to hear arguments towards either of those proposals. If you'd please raise your hand again under the participants button at the very bottom, you'll see a list. At the bottom of that is a opportunity for you to mute or to raise your hand. So I'm looking for anyone. If you'd state your name and place of residence, we'd like to hear from you. Cassie, do you see any movement?
I don't see anyone right now.
All right. All right, I'll close public hearing. Council, we need to consider these things as separate items. Dave, could you be prepared to speak to A? And can I ask Jordan to be prepared to speak to B? So, Dave, do you want to lead us out?
I don't know that there's a lot to do here. This is pretty routine that we're supposed to conduct an analysis of what the actual costs for utilities are, this one being our stormwater. It's only logical that we would keep this updated because impact fees are not fees to our current citizens. They're a fee assessed as the impact for those who join the community. So we want them to pay what the impact actually is. So, just to clarify that for anyone who wasn't sure that was listening, but this is just logical that we should constantly be keeping up on top of this for changes that are necessary due to our developing community.
Council, I'll open that to discussion. If any of you have other things that you'd like.
I guess one thing I would like to look at is just with the comparison there, can we address why we are more than double our neighboring communities? And just if we can kind of go over that, I just think there's a lot of people who'd be curious about that.
Yeah, and I had the same concern when I looked at it originally. It just depends on the city type, the city makeup, the projects that are designed to handle those developments. And Robert may be able to add a little bit better explanation than I, but usually we've been in the middle of the pack on a lot of these. I'm going to chalk it up to it. It's really just the cost of the projects that we have on the docket to do. I don't know if you want to add to that, Robert.
Yeah, you hit it right on. A lot of our stormwater outfalls are in ditches, and they don't, they're open ditches until they get to the Great Salt Lake. So some of the developments that come in are on our outside borders of the city, southwest and north, right? So, and they are dealing with piping ditches. So a lot of the cost of these is doing just that, is piping these ditches with a size that's big enough to handle the capacity of the development.
So the reason why we're kind of leading the pack in this type of a fee is because of the West Davis corridor?
No, I wouldn't say that. I think in comparison to other cities, a lot of them are already mostly developed in. I wouldn't say, all developed in, but a lot of these other cities don't have these long stretches of ditches to get out to the to the lake. We're just piping through developments to where we would have to get to the lake. A lot of these other developments don't have that open ditches. They already have piping infrastructure in place, and then we take a lot of the downstream storm flows from communities to the north and east of us. I don't know if that makes any sense to you. I guess the difference is a lot of these other cities already have their storm drain infrastructure in place.
They're just tying into existing where we're at, whereas we are on some of our developments almost pioneering on some of those and putting in the ground level work. Is that essentially the difference?
Yeah, that's right, Seth.
Okay.
I'd maybe, when you think about some of these areas that we've been able to allow to be open for years, It's because we're experiencing such growth at this point that we're finally realizing the need to have a piped system. You know, open ditches were sufficient when we didn't have as much growth, and every city gets to that point and then the fees increase. So we just happen to be at that level of service at this point. Layton went through it decades ago, and that's why their fees are not having that same structure, because they already went through it.
Any further discussion, council? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Motion to approve. Let's see.
Weren't we able to do a motion on both? Did you want to discuss
Oh.
the second one?
No, they have to be treated independently.
Okay.
Dave,
So could we just say the ordinance amending the impact fee facility plan and impact fee analysis for the stormwater?
yep, 2020-22.
Yeah, I was looking for that. There we go. 2020-22. Motion to approve 2020-22.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Corinne. Any further discussion? All in favor, council?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Cassie, would you record that one as unanimous? Now let's go to B. And Steve talked about these. This is making changes throughout the fee schedule. Any questions, Jordan, with that one?
I think we've discussed it already.
Are we good? Okay, anyone else would like to? Then I entertain a motion.
Motion to accept proposed resolution R 20-35, updating and amending the Syracuse City Consolidated Fee Schedule.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
That was
Seth.
Seth. Okay. Any other discussion, council? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Cassie, would you record that one as also? Paul, do you want to give us a briefing on the appeal of administrative decision filed by Paula Knighton?
I could just refer you to the staff memo and then also the appeal document and then our response. It's your, as the appeal body for the city, it would be your opportunity to rule on the issues. So you can proceed as you desire according to that ordinance.
Okay. All right. Council, do you have any questions of Paul?
No, I think we had a pretty thorough email. It's always fun getting an email from a lawyer.
Okay. Do you want to lead us out, Paul, Jordan?
Yeah, so I think it was actually fairly straightforward that in this scenario, I think what she is referencing in this appeal is something that was actually not an administrative decision. This was actually a vote taken by the city council. And while it was not unanimous, I don't feel this actually applies in this scenario. So I actually, due to the legalities of and the applicability of this particular resource, I don't think this applies to this situation.
All right. I'll leave it to open discussion, council.
It's pretty obvious that this was legislative instead of administrative, and so it didn't quite follow.
Anyone else? Where do you want to go with it?
Never had to do this before, so unsure with these waters.
Need to make a motion.
I don't think there's a motion to be made.
It says so at the bottom.
Oh, that's right. Okay, right there.
State the
Motion
finding.
to reject the appeal.
I don't have the actual packet open. Okay. Thank you.
Motion either to accept or deny the appeal.
Okay.
I move that we deny the appeal.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Corinne. Any further discussion, council?
If you could make findings as to why you're denying the appeal, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay. I move that we deny the appeal based on the counsel of our city attorney,
Paul Roberts. Hold on, let me see. Because this was a legislative action rather than an administrative decision. Thus, the appeal filed by Paula Knighton is not applicable.
Cassie, have you got that?
I'll accept that as a friendly amendment and second it still. Thank you.
Okay.
You know,
Any-
I'd just like to say on this, while I did not vote in favor of the decision, the question in front of us is whether the council makes legislative decisions on this or administrative decisions. All the trainings that I've had and all of the conferences that we've gone to about how these decisions are made point that this would be a legislative decision. And I think it's important to note that that's an important distinction that we have to protect, because we have a planning commission that makes an administrative decision based on the facts of whether it fits the zone or not. And then city council, because it's not an administrative decision, it's a legislative decision, has the ability to say, while this could be done, it doesn't mean it should be done, or it doesn't mean it will be done. And that's where the legislative difference, I think, is important to recognize, that we have to protect that ability to have different bodies make a different impact on such a decision. Every training that I've been to indicates that the elected body has to make the decision based on whether it should be done, not whether it must be done, or it is, it's not a technicality. There is an element of decision-making that is afforded us that's separate. So I just wanted to clear that up.
Thank you, Dave, for that point of clarification.
Yeah, I applaud the initiative, but unfortunately it appears in this scenario, the specific appeal doesn't apply to this decision.
Council, we have a motion and a second before us. Any further discussion? All in favor of denial?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Cassie, would you record that as unanimous? Noah, do you want to talk about the pedestrian walkway?
You betcha. So if you remember, we talked recently about the text amendment to pedestrian walkways. You wanted Planning Commission to review it again. Planning Commission is actually recommending that there is no length limit on the amount of fencing, so they haven't really changed much. The new section D that was created, they recommend just going ahead and removing that whole section concerning the length. So now that it's back to you, you have a recommendation from City Council. They held a public hearing. It's back. The ball's back in your court. If you wish, you can choose to amend the code or not, or do something else. Remember, now it says that you can't go further than 50 feet. We talked about 110 feet as a middle ground, or if you go with Planning Commission, that's just everything can stay the same in the particular instance that we've been wanting to apply the ordinance to.
Seth, would you lead us out? And I think I'd like to hear it from everybody.
Sure. Yeah, so this has obviously been a long drawn out decision, and I'm hoping we can come to a resolution that is as mutually beneficial as possible and doesn't need to be continually revisited. But I do understand why it's been brought up again, for the fact that some felt that, at different times they weren't heard or didn't get a chance to speak. And so I can totally appreciate that. Having sat through a Planning Commission as well as liaison there, I think that they brought forward strong arguments, and I would support the Planning Commission's recommendation to strike out the language on item or element D under the subsection there.
Okay. Corinne?
Yes, I would concur with that the one neighbor wasn't able to speak, and then also our decision as a council in helping one neighbor created a fallout for the other neighbor. And I'm totally in favor with removing section D.
Okay. David?
Well, as a council member, I've voted on this 3 times now, And I think that it's ridiculous that we would continue to revisit an ordinance until this is one of those situations where we need to think about the code and how it applies universally and not be making exceptions for one instance. And universally, this is not a good decision. It may be fine in this instance, but we're trying to change the code for one particular instance. And I think that's just bad policy making. Doesn't mean that this is going to be the end of the world right here in this instance, but we should be better policymakers. That's my opinion.
Okay, thank you, David. Lisa?
I think this is about more than just a policy that we're making. I think it's about the impact on all of the people that are directly impacted as well as the neighbors. I concur with the suggestion from the Planning Commission that says to delete those portions that give us a specific amount of footage for the fence. And it actually has created a lot of problems for those neighbors directly affected by it. We've tried to work through this, and the reason that we've revisited it is because it matters to these people. And we talk about trying to listen to our citizens, and that's what we're trying to do here. So I would agree with the Planning Commission's assessment. If that is not something that we can agree with, then we need to go ahead and surplus, because at this point, we've done all that we can to try and address it, and it needs to be the people that are right next to it that get first credit.
Okay. Jordan?
Thanks. I think this is yet another example of the city council passing code that is inconsistent throughout the city. We do not allow fences in front yards anywhere in the city except for this. And I think that's ridiculous. We tried to fix it, and now we are going back and going to create yet another exception that just creates confusion. I think we were well thought out in our initial approach as to lengths. I even attempted a compromise to try and allow for some modification of that to at least get this there. But what this comes down to is we have someone who wanted a fenced, at least a partially fenced front yard, and we're saying okay. And so it kind of sounds like it's open season on front yards because it's okay to fence them, is what the message we're sending, as long as you have a sidewalk next to you. I just feel like we're not being consistent, and we should be. And this is just one more time when we're not being consistent.
Well, then would we suggest surplusing and just let RC buy the rest of that property and be done with that walkway? Is that what you would rather see?
I said that was an acceptable scenario from the beginning.
I agreed with that as well, that's an acceptable scenario because this isn't something that's protected. It's not something that's necessary.
All I'm saying is let's not fence front yards. Let's be consistent in our coding. We don't allow this anywhere else in the city. This was our opportunity to make it the
Code
same.
consistency is important.
Really quickly, we only have very few of these walkways.
Right, so let's make them all.
Two or three,
Okay.
right? And the citizens really want this to stay in place. And if we can allow for this fence, because it's next to a walkway.
I do allow for the fence, just not in a front yard.
No, I'm just saying the fence on both sides. Then we can allow the citizens to also use it as well. I'm starting to lose power, so excuse me for just a second.
That's my only complaint, is we are applying a code inconsistently yet again. If we're not going to allow fences in front yards,
okay,
let's make that a universal policy.
My point is that it's not next to walkways on any other property except for maybe two others in the whole city.
So I live on a corner lot. Since I'm next to a walkway, I feel like I should be able to run my fence as far as I possibly can, even if it's in my front yard, as long as I don't obstruct the stop sign.
Yeah.
Are we okay with that scenario? Since I'm on a corner, I don't like it when people cut across to my yard.
Well,
I don't care, but
if we want to give first preference to the people directly connected to it, then they are fine to have it surplused. it will impact the people who are used to that walkway. So what are your thoughts about that?
Can I just insert some, I guess, factual information to help assist you in making your decision? So this particular instance that we keep talking about, that fence was actually a perimeter fence. And it's a very unique situation. You know, if I was looking at this as an ordinance enforcement issue, I actually wouldn't consider that to be a front yard fence, even though the way the road curves and all of that. It was a perimeter fence that was installed prior to the home. So it's not like the guy moves in is like, I want a fence in my front yard. It was there when he moved in.
But if you allow code enforcement to be selective, then that opens a real big can of worms. You can't say that because this happened for a different reason, we're now not going to enforce it.
I'm not universal at all. I was just trying to, I guess, give some more facts about the situation, and maybe we've already been over it a million times, and so it's up to you guys. And then the other I guess factual thing I'll insert in here is this has been ran through as a text amendment. So if we were wanting to surplus the property, then that would be, it hasn't been properly noticed for a surplusing. This is for a text amendment.
I don't feel like I want to surplus. I want to keep this walkway. That would be my first preference. All I'm saying is I don't want to write an ordinance. If we want to grandfather this in, I don't care anymore. But we do need to make sure that it at least goes back so that there's not a huge narrow area. If he wants to keep it, fine, we'll grandfather it in. But I don't see the point in writing an ordinance that is inconsistent throughout the city.
I'm with Jordan on this. If we want to say for some reason this gets grandfathered in and we just don't address it, fine. But my objection is creating a policy that is completely inconsistent with everything else we do.
I have to say that, we were just informed that from Noah that this is not a problem with our ordinance. So let's call the question and take a vote.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion. I have a motion to call the question.
Thank you.
I'm ready for motion.
Yep, I make a motion that we accept proposed ordinance 2020-23, amending section 815.010D of the Syracuse City Council municipal code, removing section D.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Lisa. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Cassie, would you record that 3-2? And let's move on. Okay, thank you. Item 10, ordinance 2024, amending the Syracuse City zoning map related to property at 2889 South, 3000 West. Noah, you're up again.
Okay. This one you heard from some of the neighbors today. This is a zoning map amendment. I believe we talked about this in our work session already. There were some noticing issues, so we actually held a second public hearing in Planning Commission just to make sure that it was, everything was kosher there. So the current zoning is already R1. So if the landowner wanted to put the road through there with, I believe, 6 lots, he'd be good to go. But if he wants to do the R3, then you'd be able to get more lots. The applicant is here. I saw him here earlier, Keith Russell. He's talked about a voluntary compromise, and I can let him explain it more, but essentially he would be willing to enter into an agreement that would restrict him to R2 density. So rather than rezoning it to R3 and getting 10 lots, he would be willing to rezone it to R3 and limit the same lot widths as R1, but the lot sizes of R2. And I believe we put a draft agreement together. If you liked that option, you could you could approve with that condition that that agreement be executed. But
Council, would you like to hear from the applicant?
Sure.
Okay, Mr. Russell, would you like to address the council?
Thank you. Yes, I would. Keith Russell. I live at 2078 East 200 South in Layton, Utah. I'll make this quick. It's been a long night. I commend you. I don't know how many of you have got to page 387 in your booklet for tonight, but that's where my proposal, where the proposal is for this rezone. What got me to this point is that I looked on the Syracuse City website at the zoning map and at the general plan, and noticed that the general plan has this property as R3. I also then noticed that the general plan was new, having been updated just a year ago. And my experience in the years that I've been in the engineering and surveying profession is I've been to a lot of city councils and planning commission meetings over the years. And generally speaking, I've come to the conclusion that following the general plan is the right thing to do in a city. And where the general plan had just been updated within a year, I didn't see any compelling reason to challenge that. So I submitted my rezone application based upon the R3 zone. Now, in our first meeting with the Planning Commission, we talked about lots, and I made a statement there that 100-foot frontage lots create a bigger buyer pool for a builder, at least the builders I know. And so I talked to the builders that I know, and most of them suggested that they would like to have a wider frontage lot because it creates a bigger buying pool, because homeowners could come in and put in an RV pad or a second, something along the side of their house. It gives them more flexibility. So I've asked for the R3 zone, not in order to cram 10 lots in here, but to frankly reduce the square footage because I'm restricted in my depth. My property is only 264 feet wide. 60 of that will go to a road, which leaves 102 feet of depth. And 100-foot frontage by 102 feet is a 10,000 square foot lot, which meets the R2 zone as NOAA has articulated. So what I proposed, what I kind of agreed to in the first meeting, I then proposed as a reasonable compromise in the second meeting, where I would follow the R1 zone with respect to setbacks and widths of each lot. So they would all be at least 100 feet wide. So from the street, you would have the R1 field, but I don't have the depth in order to get 12,000 square feet. And so my depth would be 102 feet, which would be 10,200 square feet. If I were to have to do 12,000 square foot lots, then I'd have frontages that would be wider than the depths, significantly wider. And I don't think you'll find many lots that have wider frontages than depths. It happens, but it's an unusual thing. Mainly because frontages cost money because you're building expensive roads. But I don't want to compromise the lot from a width standpoint by making them smaller than 100 feet. And my property is basically 407 feet in length, so 400-foot lots on either side would make it efficient. I don't want to talk about really costs, but I just do want to mention that the cost of a road is a lot, and it pencils a lot better with 4 lots instead of 3 lots. Plus, I'm not sure that the 3 lots that would be wider than they are deep would be as attractive or as easy to sell. So NOAA put together after our second meeting with the Planning Commission, and I see this is not in the packet, but this is a development agreement, which basically says that I would meet the R1 zone with respect to setbacks and frontages, but I would also then meet the R2 zone with respect to square foot. And I am very much willing to sign that agreement and move forward with the development under those conditions. And those would be conditions that would be upon anyone if I sold the property, which I really don't intend to sell. So with that, I'll entertain any questions you might have on what I've said.
Lisa, would you lead us out, and let's go around with this one?
Yes, so we've talked about going to R2, which would allow for how many? Do we have an idea on that?
Who do you want to speak? Noah, do you want to speak or do you want me to speak?
Go ahead, Mr. Russell. Why don't you go ahead and speak?
Okay. If I say anything wrong, correct me. I believe the R2 zone requires, well, the property would be zoned R3 because it would follow the master plan. But the development agreement would then put a restriction on the property that it has to have a minimum of 10,000 square feet per lot, which is the R2 zone requirement. It would also then have an additional restriction on it that would say that the frontage has to meet the R1 zone, which would be 100-foot minimum frontage. And that would be in the development agreement, which I'm happy to sign.
And how many units are you talking about there?
At 100 foot wide, there would be 4 lots on each side of the road. The road would go just right through the middle of the property and leave 102 feet on the north side and 102 feet on the south side. And there's 407 feet in length. So divide that equally and you got about 102 by 102 as your lot width and length, which would be over 10,000 square feet.
And how many lots?
8, 4 on
8
each
lots.
side
Yeah.
of the road.
Right.
Yeah.
You're basically talking 6, 8, or 10. And the R3 would allow more, but he's compromising to do less, to try to be more contextually appropriate and like he said. But and the reason why, if you look at the general plan map, he already has R1, but if he wanted to do, I mean, these are all minimum lot sizes, you know, so R1 is a 12,000 square foot lot, but to do a 10,000 square foot lot, he could do R2, but then that's in the low density general plan map designation. So, I mean, the end result would still be the same. It's just this way is probably more straightforward.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I wanted to hear exactly what we're dealing with, the comparisons there. So, and it looks like the Planning Commission is most concerned with the animals. How worried are we about the animals?
Well, I think I was just going to say, I think as we've heard from some of the individuals in the neighborhoods around there or in the adjacent property owners and such, their biggest concern is that they have kind of this, you know, preserved lifestyle that's been afforded to them because of their location. And when we do change the zone designation, there are some things that might potentially come out of compliance with the zone in regards to like location of chicken coops or structures and such. And so whatever we can do to preserve that.
So that's the question. So do we need to put something in place? I mean, and when I say how worried are we about the animals, I don't mean we don't care about the animals. I mean, what are we concerned with the impact on the animals here? Because I don't have any really specific things besides, I mean, I've got them all listed. We just want to make sure that they're taken care of and so that the people that are existing there now don't have to alter what they're used to.
Well, I was just going to say also, like in regards to, so they've made some comments around, you know, who wants to live around such and such, you know, slaughtered cows and such. And so I think the way I guess I would foresee it is where maybe some trouble would come in, or not even trouble, but just the fact that as those issues arise, you would see maybe future homeowners that buy on some of these lots maybe complaining or making comments to the city that, you know, this is not appropriate in our area. And that would be, you know, tough to handle when that's something that's been going on for quite some time. And so whatever we can do to make sure that that doesn't become, you know, an issue for these folks, because I would not feel comfortable, you know, allowing something to come in that forces them to do something they've never been asked to do.
Yeah, I agree.
And maybe I probably didn't explain that very well. if you want, I
Yeah.
can explain how the animal points work. So our code has a point system, and based off of your lot size, you're allowed certain animals.
Uses.
And so just because this comes in next to these people doesn't change the amount of points. But Seth kind of hit on the head. The big difference is those new residents might complain about their animals. And nobody's, just because if these lots were to come in, they wouldn't have to change the location of any of their structures. They don't have to tear down anything. The difference is there's a part in the animal ordinance that says you have to be 50 feet from a house and 150 feet from a road for new. So if they wanted to build a new structure, now they have this house and a road that they have to measure from, and it wouldn't prevent them from building a new structure, but it may affect where they can put it on their property. And so that's what Planning Commission is recommending, that if you were to approve this, then you would also authorize that ordinance, like a self-initiated ordinance amendment of the animal ordinance to say that, maybe the number isn't 150 feet from the road. Maybe it's, I don't know.
Well, can we just
10 feet?
I mean, it almost seems like we need to just exempt it. Would it be possible to exempt them when new construction now abuts their property?
Quick question though.
No.
Noah, it sounds like the lot depths on these are going to be 102 feet in the rear of the yard. So that's more than enough footage to the road, correct?
The current requirement is 150 feet. So,
but I'm saying, like, isn't that the rear lot is 102?
Yeah, so they'd still have to go like 48 feet.
Yeah, so that would cut into
Right.
their property 48 feet. And if they want it, but where before they might have been able to put that
So they,
and like 5 feet from their property boundary,
okay, so the entire lot is 102 foot deep. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
The
Of
new
these
lots,
proposals?
yeah. And
Okay.
whether it's R1 or R2, R3,
Okay.
either way, our standard road width
Yeah.
is 60. So any way you dice
Right.
it up, that house is probably going to be within
The
5 to 10
difference of,
feet difference.
yeah, R1 is only 10-foot difference. I get it. Yeah. Okay, so it would cut into their 48 feet. Okay.
One
get
thing I
you.
would recommend is we've kind of developed a policy of what is and isn't adjacent based on road widths. I believe that we've come up with 85 feet. Once you are past 85 feet, you are no longer considered an adjacent structure because you're essentially across the street. I wonder if we can actually apply that a little more universally throughout our code to try and bring in some of that consistency we've discussed and use that as kind of a measure of when you are and are not adjacent to something. So I think
Good
we ought,
idea.
I think we ought to actually go through and revisit that to make sure that we are using that terminology throughout our code. And this would just be one opportunity to bring that into compliance with that definition.
That's a good idea. Yeah, if you guys want, we can amend the ordinance, but just I guess it depends on what your decision is here.
Okay, so does the agreement have in there, I mean, it already protects what they're doing now. It's just if they build something new, correct?
That's
Yeah,
that's by
so-
virtue of city and state code. That's a legal use that was established, so it can continue without interruption. Yeah, there's no need for anything to be removed.
Right.
But the question
Okay,
was just
great.
new
Well,
structures.
On farmland,
Thank you.
protecting the right for people to be able to make changes and improvements and adjustments, I think is a critical right to a success of a farm.
Agree.
Things happen. I mean, you have to make changes.
And that's what Planning Commission was saying, that they really wanted to protect their ability.
Okay.
I want to be able to protect these people's right to continue to exist.
Paul, if one of these residents that are performing farming activities, let's say they wanted to tear down a barn and build one in the same footprint, would that be allowed?
Yeah, that's still allowed too.
That's still allowed?
Yes.
Okay, well then,
But to what degree? I mean, if they move it 5 feet over, is that still allowed?
If it brings it in a nonconformity with code that's changed, then possibly not.
See, and that's where I'm concerned, because these little adjustments can affect the people who live there now their ability to continue. I mean, what happens if they've got a water issue and they have to move a barn 5 feet over and they decide, well, it's worth rebuilding anyway? Well, code won't allow them to do that because it's now in a new location.
But
I
they
think,
would be,
and
they would
one
be-
thing that, go ahead,
Go
sorry,
ahead.
Mayor.
they would be open to appeal. They could go to our board, a variance board.
Paul, what were you gonna say?
Well, and that's, yeah, one thing that Noah was mentioning was that, one thing that we could do is change the distance from the road. If you made it, or like, as Jordan mentioned, if you made it 85 feet, then that would really remove that road issue in this case.
Makes
And then,
sense.
yeah, if you want to look at the back setbacks and see if that's too much, then you could look at that at the same time. That would be a separate, obviously a separate proceeding before the commission and the council.
I'm all for making things more consistent. I think Jordan's idea is a good one, but in regards to this one, I'm not sure I see why R1 is a challenge here. I mean, I get it. The backyard is a little bit shallow, but
It's just that we'd have to change our general plan to
Well-
back to R1.
It's also the fact too that people prefer to, if they're gonna have the same size backyard no matter what, then the side yards are usually not used near like a backyard is, and so it's not a big deal.
I get that, but this happens in cul-de-sacs all the time where you have weird shaped backyards just because that's how the cul-de-sac turns out.
Sure, but
So
I'm just saying
this
that
isn't unusual.
this is just side yard. How you want them to have a massive side yard or just a regular 100-foot regular type
Well,
of side
well,
yard?
he's already
The
agreed to
frontage.
do an R1 frontage, which
Right.
isn't huge. So
Right.
I'm actually
100.
okay with this recommendation as long as he's willing to sign that agreement.
I agree.
I
Make it R2.
Yep.
well,
R2 frontage.
well, it would be R1
R1
frontage with an R2 lot size.
Oh, yeah.
You're
An
not going to
R3
get an
zone.
R with an R3 zone.
Yeah.
Yeah, see,
Could we be
that's
more
where I'm-
confusing?
That's where I think it goes too far. I get where this is coming from, that R3 is the designation, but when I look at that, I wonder why we ever had a zone that you couldn't be less dense by your own choosing. That's the
Yeah.
part that I'm just really,
Well,
we
that's-
talked about that when we did
That's what he's
this,
doing.
huh?
I know, but
That's what he's doing, and he's just getting it in writing so that it's a guarantee that he doesn't, bait and switch. That's all.
Look, I'm okay with that. The point is that when the reason this came about was because our zoning suggests that you wouldn't be able to go lower. And I think that should always be an option. We should fix that.
It should. I think it is an option no matter what. He's just getting it.
Then
in
we
writing.
don't need to do anything.
I think,
Well,
yeah, I
it's
think
just
what,
in writing as a guarantee that that's what he will do.
yeah, maybe I can clarify. I think maybe you're not all understanding. So yeah, what Dave's referring to is in our zoning code. It says that in order to change the zoning, you need to have it match the general plan. That was something we did a few years back. And so
Okay.
what Dave is suggesting is perhaps we could have it say it needs to match the general plan or be a less dense. You could sort of add that provision, or you could get rid of the section that says it has to match the general plan.
I actually like the provision.
Paul?
No, adding the statement.
So it'd basically be R3, but with an R2 development agreement.
Basically,
That's what's being proposed today.
Mayor was trying to get a question to Paul.
Paul, would you review the validity of a development agreement and the council's ability to
Enforce it.
to manage zoning complications in zoning through a development agreement?
So generally, if you have a willing party like this, and it's not a one-sided thing where we're mandating this, then it's going to be acceptable. We're also not exempting him from anything the code says. R3, you can go as big as you want. So essentially, we're just ensuring that the lot sizes are a specific area. So it's not that we're exempting him or anything. It's just we want some assurances that he's going to build what he's saying, and he's offered it up. It wasn't something we mandated.
Yeah,
I think what's great here is that it is an R3 zone, and we are always talking about nobody exceeding the minimum mandatory sizes, and we have somebody willing to do it.
Yep.
Yeah, I think on this one, I'd actually like to move forward with that agreement, and I'm willing to grant the zoning, but I would like to also put a note in that I would like to address that specific spot in the general plan and allow for less dense zones in a zone if someone is interested.
Just
I'm
not the
totally good with that.
And we also need to amend the animal ordinance as well for the 85 feet.
Well, it's
I
not.
like that he's spelling out that this would be R2 or even R1. Again, I think that the easy way is to just leave it as R1. But if we have to go to R2 to deal this, the hesitation I have is we're going to designate it something that it's not going to be.
That's not true.
It
So
can be a minimum.
So you can always build an R1 lot in an R3 zone. There's nothing that prevents you because no lot has a maximum square footage. Or sorry, no zone has a maximum square footage. So he is perfectly within his rights to build an R2 zone or R2 lot in an R3 zone.
Okay, so Noah, can you go back to the current general plan map for just a second? Okay, so here's where this concerns me a little. If we take this literally, all of this orange, that means everything on the east side of 3000 is telling a developer that we want R3, when in fact we don't. We've just all kind of concluded that that's not what we want, and that it's not what we wanted it interpreted to be. So this is where I'm getting the go to an R3 is kind of off base, because if you approve this as an R3, but it's not really an R3, it's actually an R2 density, then you're communicating to the guy that buys the next lot, hey, an R3 really means this, but it doesn't, or we really want R3 when we really don't. Do you see where I'm going with that?
Yeah, if you recall, I actually tried to add R2 and
Yes, you did, and I
R1
agree
to
with
this
you.
zone, and I got shut down.
No, I agree with
Now
you.
back to Paul's point though, the developer requested this, and therefore we aren't the ones seeking this out, he is. That's the point that we need to realize here. So we're not trying to send any mixed messages about other zoning. He's come forward and requested this, and I appreciate it.
I hear that. What I'm concerned about is the way that it is on paper is what other people will read.
Yeah, to Dave's point, I guess the alternate scenario with still the same end result, you could take this area of property and change the general plan map to low density, and then the zoning could go from R1 to R2.
Yeah.
But the end result would still be the same.
Yeah.
But if you guys felt like that was a more straightforward way of going about it,
it fixes the general map instead of making an exception, because that's what we're communicating going forward.
yeah, it just means more time, but we're in the business of making sure things are right. And, in my opinion, I think either way works for what I need to do, but obviously you guys need to make the decision based
Well,
off. of
how
what
much
you're
more
doing.
time?
Since
talking
we're
about
all
2
in,
weeks.
but since
No,
we're
we're
all
talking a couple more months, because you'd have to change the general. You could run it concurrently. You could change the general plan and the zoning, but that'll have to go back through planning commission, back through your work session, and back to another voting session, and have another public hearing. So that would be the third public hearing that these residents, and the
Well,
end
getting it
result will
right,
still
I
be
think,
the
is
same. I don't
important.
know if the residents will still feel differently or just
where the
because
end
it's a different
result's going to be
designation.
the same, and we are thrilled with his proposal, I suggest that we call the question and vote.
I have a
Well,
motion.
I
to
don't
call-
think it is the same.
I have a motion to call the question.
Okay.
Okay, I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we accept proposed ordinance 2020-25, amending the city zoning map related to property at, am I reading the right one? 1556 South, is this the correct one?
No.
Okay, 2889 South, 3000 West, residential R1 to residential R3 with a development agreement 4 in R2 zone, mandating a frontage of 100-foot frontage and 102-foot depth. Is that good?
Yep.
Do we also want to add something about the farm animals?
We're going
Well,
to come.
We'd have to,
we're
go
go-
ahead, Mayor.
That has to be separate, I think.
Yeah, we're going to do that separate. We'll just give some instructions to Noah here in a minute.
What I'm concerned with in all of this is I actually want to move this forward, but can we approve a developer agreement that none of us have actually physically seen? I'm taking it on faith that's what it says, but where I've never actually seen it, I just want to make sure that we can actually approve a development agreement that has never been in a packet. And
I think we have to table.
that's my only issue, because I would move forward on this, but where I've never seen a development agreement, I can't approve something I've never seen.
That's a fair question. Noah, can you tell us?
Well, I'll let Paul correct me if I'm wrong, but I think if you say as a condition of approval that you want to see a development agreement
Okay.
and tell us what you want to be in it, we can execute the agreement. Paul?
Oh, that's a slippery slope.
I think it's wise to have the agreement before the body before you impose it or before you accept it, because there could be some terms that you want. For instance, we didn't mention that in the agreement, there's a requirement that on the plat, it notifies buyers of lots that they're going to be next to agricultural uses that will generate smells and sounds and things to kind of give advance warning to people who are buying these lots that they're going to have these issues.
So I have the
it's
agreement. Do you
wise.
want me to pull it up? Is that?
Oh, you have the agreement? It just wasn't in the package?
I have the agreement. It came in
Yeah, but we
after I had
haven't
the
seen it.
packet and I didn't get a chance to
Okay.
update it with Cassie.
So it's, okay, so it's not in the packet.
I actually
right,
recommend
so-
tabling.
So I make a substitute motion that we table.
Okay, I'm going to
second.
make a motion to withdraw my motion first, okay? Thank you.
Well, you don't need to. I just made a substitute motion.
Well, actually, that's not
David.
necessarily kosher,
Moving
but
on.
thanks.
Okay. Dave, would you like to make a motion?
I make a motion that we table this until we can see the development agreement.
Okay.
I second it.
Second by Seth. Okay, any further discussion, council? All in favor?
All right.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Noah, do you have enough marching orders?
Thank you, Russell.
So
Yeah.
I have one question.
Mr. Russell.
Mr. Russell,
Keith,
sorry.
yeah.
Will this be 2 weeks from now or a month from now again? Do we know that? Does it
Probably.
say that?
Month.
Probably a month.
That's fine. Thank you for your time. I wish
We
we
can,
I wish we got you the development agreement because we've had it for a couple of days, but no problem. I've got time. I'm not in a big hurry.
what we can do, if it's all right with you, we have a work session coming up in 2 weeks. We can, if they're all in agreement with the development agreement that we see at that time, we can put it on a consent calendar for November.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Keith.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your time. Good night.
Thank you.
Okay, let's, item 11. Noah, you get a lot of stage time.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's busy times right now. Okay, zoning map, general commercial to climate controlled indoor self-storage unit zone. This is in our town center. The proposal is to build on a lot that has been sitting vacant. A 3-story indoor storage unit. So the question at hand, as it applies to our legislative powers as a city, as we're looking at the long-term vision of the town center, is would this use be appropriate at this location? The details of all of the storage unit would come with the future site plan. But right now we're very high level thinking, is this appropriate? Would this negatively affect the existing retail? Would this set a precedent? Are there higher and better things that we would rather see at the site? Currently it's general commercial, so the options are hold the course and wait, or we do have the opportunity now to build something. If we rezone it, then I'm sure the applicant would proceed forward with the site plan application. So yeah, Colby Anderson is his name. I believe he's here in the meeting, and I'm sure he'd be happy to answer any questions you have for him.
Council, you've met with both Mr. Griffin and Mr. Anderson. Would you like them to, do you have any questions for them? I'd like to hear from them.
So we received an email from some of maybe a member from the I don't know what it would be called, the group that kind of manages or owns in that property, and they talked about out of compliance with multiple CCNRs. Can we speak to that, or have you guys, Nate or Colby, have you guys been informed of that, or can we get an update on that?
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, we have reached out to several of those property owners already and have made them aware of our proposed project. And we've talked to an attorney that would have to help us amend those CCNRs. So we haven't received any really significant pushback yet in the ones we've spoken with. So that's all looking good. That would just be something we'd have to pursue right away after this rezone happens, obviously. But yeah, we've started chasing that down. We're starting to have those discussions. We've had an attorney look at that. All it is in the end, there's not even like a formal board of owners or anything that you might expect here. What it becomes is a legal document that will have to spell out the variations from the original CCRs and how we're amending that. And then each of those property owners has to sign that, and then that goes and gets recorded with the county. So yeah, totally aware of that. We're okay with it. Like I said, it's all positive in the ones we've spoken with so far, and we're still working on that.
Can I ask this question regarding that? Because we had a proposal for a space in the same area, not this exact lot, but another one. And we got all the way to the point of approving the final and found out that one key property owner objected and the whole thing fell apart. So if that's still the case, that any single property owner could object, I'd like to understand that a little better, Noah.
So CCNRs are not something that the city has purview over. Like Colby said, that they're
recorded. But you remember the incident with the gas station, and then one property owner kiboshed it. I just want to know, is that applicable here too? Because if it is, absolutely, we kind of need to know in advance that we're, not chasing something that won't ever happen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an attorney. Maybe Paul's best to talk about.
Because we've had one property owner already reach out and say they absolutely would not agree.
Yeah, we've had a letter in opposition to it, and I've read through the CCNRs as well. But the city doesn't have purview over those. And so if there was an opposing property owner that objected, then that would definitely create problems for them.
Paul, would you weigh in here?
Yeah, it is a private issue. I know we've looked through the CCNRs, but we were mostly focusing on restrictions and things. I wasn't looking at amending it, whether that requires unanimous votes or not. So I can't answer that question because I don't recall that particular provision.
Again, I'm not trying to say that it's right or wrong. I'm just trying to say if that's an obstacle that we know is in the way, we're kind of chasing something that we know has an issue that has to be resolved. That's where I'm going with this. I'm not trying to say that, I have a feeling one way or the other. I'm trying to say that we ran into that. And if we're going to run into it again, we're spending time right now on something we have no control over.
You're saying we have a chicken and egg thing where he needs to resolve the CCNRs, but why would he resolve the CCNRs if he doesn't get the zoning? But if we give him the zoning and he can't get the CCRs, the zoning doesn't do any good because this is the only thing that can go on that zoning. Did I say that right?
I would recommend just controlling what you can control and deciding just pretend that if you were to give approval, then this thing would be a go. So if you want it there, approve it. If you don't want it there, don't approve it.
Okay, question about the thoroughfare that is supposed to be in those agreements too, though.
That's also concerning the CCNR. I don't know if that's a publicly recorded easement. It might be, and that would be something that they'd have to meet with the site plan application. If it was something, you know, a legally recorded easement, but
Yeah,
you know, I can't entirely answer
okay.
all of the specific questions about how the site plan would have to change should we approve. Right now, like I said, we're just floating at the very high level.
Okay.
And, you know, if your decision is hinging on whether or not he can pull it off, I would just assume that he can. He's here, he wants to do it. Assume in some form or other there will be storage units there. So if you want the storage units there, I'd recommend approving the land use. But if you do not want storage units in the town center, I'd recommend denying it. And then not getting into the weeds of easements or CC&Rs or which property owner doesn't want it.
Thank you.
What do you want?
Okay. All right. Well, I'll go ahead and state that I hope to have some better use on this. That's where I'll stand.
Okay. Lisa?
I think that this is such an important spot where this is town center and we've talked about planning for it so much. And I'm concerned that this is a filler rather than a plan. And it's nothing at all about the people who want to fill it. I am grateful that there's somebody who wants to invest here. I'm just concerned that we are not going to look like we have a master. The higher and better use to me is not being met with this in this spot. So I also am concerned that it's going to look like we've kind of put something there just to fill space without a master idea of what we wanted to do there. And I think it's going to be with more people and the West Davis corridor coming through there, that is going to be seen more. And it needs to have a little bit better feel of planning to it, in my opinion.
Seth?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the statements you guys have both made. I think right now it obviously has been sitting there vacant for quite some time. And so it already gives me that feel that it's, you know, not planned or whatnot, if I'm just kind of looking at it from an outsider's perspective. I'm happy that they've come forward with a plan. I'm reticent to vote to support it at this time, just simply based on the fact that all of a sudden we did get some interest in the property, and if there is some higher and better use, I would be happy to revisit this, but I think at this time I'm just not there yet.
Okay. David?
Well, as I explained on the phone, I didn't necessarily object to this, but I think it's bad planning to put too much of the same thing in all at the same time. And while I would have preferred this option, we have two other similar units going in, and I'm just concerned whenever you start putting a whole bunch of things in one, you're setting somebody up for failure. So in light of what we've passed recently, I would be hesitant to pass this.
You're talking about the storage unit.
I'm talking that we've already passed storage units
Okay.
out on on Antelope, and we finally are getting plans for the ones that we approved up on 193. If both of those come online this year, that makes this one, the third all at the same time. I'm not against competition, but that's a lot of storage units, and storage units don't exactly say, hey, our town's really on the map. Look at how many storage units we have. So I guess if we were saying, hey, there's an Italian restaurant and now we're going to put in a German one, I'd go, okay, well, that's different.
Okay. Jordan?
I just think it's fun to hear all my other city council members make the same arguments I made against the other the storage sheds that were a less of a value to the city, but now make them to this, which would have been a better value.
Location.
Exactly. I don't think this is the highest and best use. I didn't think the other one was either. I would have approved this one over the other one, simply because This one brings a lot more value to the community as far as better use of land. I think the location is actually pretty good for this. And were it not for what I feel is an oversaturation, I would be all for this as opposed to the other one, but I don't get that choice. So I think we are reaching a saturation point.
Okay. I entertain a motion.
I thought the issue with the other one was that they wouldn't maintain their yards, but either way.
Sorry.
That was also mentioned. You're right.
I think the point of location that Seth made is that there are places that we have to plan for a larger space for. And in this case, I think this is a really big space that has a different feel in the middle of town.
Okay, I'd look for a motion.
Okay, I guess I'm making motions tonight. Motion that we deny proposed ordinance 2025, amending the city zoning map related to property located at 1556 South, 2000 West.
Okay. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Lisa. Any further discussion, council? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Was that unanimous? Cassie,
Yeah.
did you hear unanimity there? Would you record that as such? Okay, Noah, let's go on. Item 12.
Okay. Doll, MXD. So if you remember, we've been talking a lot about this project. It's a mixed use project, 254 units, 50,000 square feet of office. It's actually bumped up a little bit since he's provided a 2-story design of the second office building. Remember, that was kind of one of the sticking features, is we didn't have a front elevation for that office building that's supposed to go where the White House is. We have in the packet the latest set of plans. I won't go through all of this analysis stuff. We've been through this before as far as the planning, IBI studies and analysis. The latest set of plans, we did run into a couple issues with the ordinance, and one important thing to explain is the difference between a rezone and a site plan. You know, a site plan is an administrative review. Every bit of the ordinance, you know, we scour through it a little bit more carefully. But at the rezone, the elevations that we've required and the plans that we've required, it isn't necessarily so that we can review every inch of the ordinance to make sure it's conforming with every inch of the ordinance. It's more to understand the flavor and the proposal and the theme and the architecture and the heights and the densities and stuff. We want to take it really close down the line. We require a lot up front, but it's not the site plan. And that's where I think maybe some confusion has popped up. So this isn't the site plan, but it does have a lot of detail. And if we have an opportunity to decide if there's any issues with the ordinance right now, now's a good time to work it out. So here in my review, anything in yellow highlight is kind of the things that are sticking out. So building A has 34 units. The ordinance says you can only have 24 per building. This is a little bit of a unique situation where you have a corner building, and you have the corner is all of the amenities and the clubhouse stuff, and then on each end are apartments. So it's kind of like 2 apartment buildings, and then kind of sandwiched in between them is some amenities. And so that's one issue. And then the other issue is the tandem parking, and some of the, you know, they need to work out some of the stuff with UDOT, and then with building materials, they'll have to work through some of the materials as they're stated on in the site plan. But the materials, that's easy to fix during site plan, but we want to make sure that we work out anything that will really affect the orientation of the buildings or the, the big stuff. Another part is that it says in the ordinance that no tandem parking is allowed, and one of the residents mentioned that. Tandem parking is the way we park in all of our homes. You have a garage and then you have a driveway in front of the garage. And so the part of the design of this, and let me pull it up here. So that might be easier to read here. So if you look at, so each one of these buildings has kind of a front and a rear. And so this is the front of the building and this is the rear, and it has what's called tuck under garages. And so those garages will be assigned to individual units, and each unit is required to have 2 stalls. And so say, for example, you have a single car garage that's assigned or rented for your unit, you'd also get a space in front of that unit there. And so just like we do sometimes have to shuffle cars at our house, if somebody that lives here is parking in the garage and they have another car parked there, they would have to shuffle in and out. And so the ordinance, says that no tandem, period. So it's pretty cut and dry that is an issue. One thing that the applicant Jerry has done is you do have the ability to do shared parking in the ordinance, and he's tallied all of this parking that he's providing over here, and there actually is enough mathematically to say, that he wouldn't be, should there be an agreement there, he wouldn't not be able to cover losing those, if that makes sense. But he says that he really wants to keep them because of the convenience factor. So that leaves us with a little bit of a predicament here. The options are, there's 4 options. Option number 1, you could say, sorry, change your plan, make it meet the ordinance, right? Option number 2, you could write into the development agreement acknowledging the areas that don't meet the ordinance and say, hey, we recognize that the tandem parking, that's still not okay unless there's a future text amendment. So it's kind of pointing to a potential future text amendment. If you remember in the whole application, they had that building that didn't have any brick, rock, and stone. And we're like, excuse me, it doesn't meet the brick, rock, stone, but we'll let you leave it in the plans, acknowledging that you won't be able to build that unless the ordinance changes. So that's option number 2, is essentially change the ordinance in the future and kind of point to that in the development agreement. The third option is one that we haven't really done much before. Paul's a little nervous, but is also an option we think, is to write into the DA that we recognize that it doesn't meet those elements of the ordinance, but we're okay with it. But in order to do that, you have to run it through Planning Commission and City Council, just like it were an ordinance amendment, because that development agreement essentially becomes the new ordinance for that project. And then I guess the 4th option is you could table this and just change the ordinance. If you weren't concerned with it, you could change the ordinance and just table it and then resume your action on the project. So there's 4 options. There's probably more that we can consider, but hopefully, I've been talking for a little while now. Hopefully that's all making sense. From a planning perspective, and I can let Jerry explain a little bit more in detail. The thought that went into the design is this being a main entrance and the massing of these 2 buildings, creating kind of a focal point as you come in, that L-shaped. If you were to just follow the ordinance, you'd have to separate this building or cut some off the ends here, and it may kind of lose this kind of focal point aspect of the design.
Can I
But
ask a question about the tandem parking?
yeah,
So are these tandem parkings would be assigned and designated to a specific occupant?
well, I can let Jerry answer, but the way I understand it is that the garages, the tandem parking would go to the same person that that is renting the garage, because that wouldn't make sense to have to.
It has-
Exactly,
out.
that's my concern. So
Yeah.
if the spot in front of the garage is designated to that person, then
Same household.
I don't have as big an issue because they have to deal with it within their own household. If it is a free-for-all on the second space, that would be a nightmare for residents. They
Yeah,
would
you'd be
hate it.
blocked in and.
Yeah,
I think it can be that way, yeah.
Jerry, Mr. Preston, would you come forward and take the questions of the council for a minute? And then Paul, would you be preparing for an opinion on maybe a suggestion on the direction we maybe ought to go?
Sure, Mayor. Are you ready for me to address that? I'd like to answer Dave's question as far as the tandem parking goes.
Yes, Jerry, go ahead.
Yeah, I first want to apologize to the city council and to the Walker Estates HOA and Mr. Knighton. I did reach out to them last Wednesday and was hoping to have a meeting with them prior to this city council meeting tonight. And it's actually my fault. He responded back the next day, last Thursday, and I did not see his response and had nothing set up. And we couldn't get anything set up for today until later this week. So we are working on that. And I do want to commend Mr. Knighting for his effort that he's put in here. He has looked at this really close. There's a lot of times that you as a developer just get a lot of complaints. I will tell you, Mr. Knighting is not one to complain. He's tried to help design this. He's done some plans. So very active. So I do appreciate his input and his efforts there because he has put in a lot of effort. But to address the tandem parking that's in your ordinance, this has worked really well. This is on a project that's in Farmington, also in 2 projects in West Haven, and they're all over. And it does do that if you have the garage, you cannot use that for storage space, and that is also your additional parking in front. No one can park in front of it, and you can't use any other space other than what's in front of that garage. And typically it doesn't, if you were manage this on a smaller scale, but the management company has done this in several different communities, and it's working quite well when they're on site and they're managing it, and they oversee it really well. So the parking does work for that. And we would like to see it happen. And I think that what we're doing is also giving those spaces that we're counting as tandem parking and using that cross agreement with the commercial side, which we know that they really offset. When the commercial is being used during the day and when the people come home at night, it gives you the opportunity to cross mix that parking.
So I have a question. I'm just looking at, for example, building B there. There's 14 garages. Looks like there's some, this is a 3-story. My question is, so let's assume that these are 2-bedroom apartments. Maybe it's a married couple, which means they probably have 2 cars. If they have one guest come over, where would they park if they want to visit someone in building B?
Well, again, you've got that where a lot of these are 1-bedrooms as well as 2s and 3s. And so then you do have all of the other exterior common parking areas for guests. And that's where our advantage comes into, where we do have the cross parking agreement for the commercial to the west that they could park in those areas.
That's a long hike from Dollar to building B or to building C.
Sure.
Or it's not Dollar. What is to the west? Or to the west, you've got the proposed office space down there. But
Correct.
still, that's a hike.
But there's a lot of parking over. You have to remember that actually at 2 is what your ordinance requires. Where this is working, a lot of these cities are down to 1 and anywhere from 1 to 1.5 in parking.
Okay. What I don't want to have is neighbors hating each other.
Understand that completely. And that's why it works better to have a
common space
there's on site to manage those conflicts.
Okay.
But there is the extra on-site right there between building, I can't even see what that is. Yeah, right there. Yeah.
And there's another one between K and J. And then you have some along Doll Lane.
There's also along the perimeter too.
All the way along the perimeters, yes.
Yeah.
In between the garages.
So what are we
Yeah.
thinking? What are we feeling about the splitting the building versus allowing it to move forward? I don't like the idea of splitting it if it comes at the cost of amenities and
Yeah, I think it's a better building with it connected.
I agree.
Well, and it's really ridiculous that it gets split because of that. So I'm thinking that we need to do a text change to the ordinance, like is recommended.
Can I address that just a little bit, Councilman, if that's okay? I
Yeah.
mean, I agree with where you're going there. You just have to remember that when we designed that building with that commercial on the corner and our look of our amenities to be a part of that, it was kind of to give that same look. If you wanted to go to pages 454 and 455, which shows our renderings there, I mean, you can see what we've tried to do is to get those both to look very similar, to get that approach looking to there. And yes, that really will kind of hurt us when we split it, because we would probably, our only option would be, let's use that one right there, up one, that one. You know, you can see if I split it going south, that really breaks it right there at that main entrance after the corner section. Or go back up to the other picture, if you would, Noah, right there. Then going east, it would be a little bit further, we'd be splitting it right there and separating the buildings.
I like the look as it is. I think it creates continuity of design as you've presented it there.
It also says city center too.
Mm-hmm.
I could tell you the reasoning for the 24, and it's just to try to avoid overly large buildings. You know, if you can imagine if all of these were connected and how long and big, and it's also the more perforations you have, the more pedestrian activity and better circulation you have that's outside. But where this is kind of on a corner is a little bit of an unforeseen kind of issue where, you know, it doesn't really affect the circulation the way it's designed.
Yeah, I'm. Go ahead. You're probably gonna say the same thing, Corinne.
I was just going to say, where this is going to take the same amount of time one way or another to make these changes, I think doing that text change is needed so that we're doing it right. Sorry, is that what you're going to say, Jordan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and we wanted to hear from Paul. Is this a good time to hear from Paul? Because he gave us some suggestions.
Sure. Yeah. So what's being requested is not something that we've done historically, as far as saying we're going to pass a development agreement and exempt specific parts of the code. The state code does suggest that you can do that. Definitely, the most recent case from earlier this year said that if you're going to do something by development agreement that is legislative in nature, then you need to go through the public hearing process. That's why we said that we need to go through the planning commission if you're going to go that route of exempting in a DA. But it makes a lot more sense, and it's a lot more established for if this really is not something that you really is a deal breaker for you, then we should just change the text, because then it can be equally applied to anyone who applies. And that's a very well established method to change requirements, and it's not going to be something that's novel or unusual. So that would be my recommendation. I don't think it slows anything down. If we can get this to the planning commission soon, and they can look at it. And again, I think the big question is, when it comes to the number of units and the tandem parking, are these issues that you would say no to the project over, or is this something that you say, yeah, I think given these circumstances, we'd like to look at changing it? And that's the big question. And then, the secondary question would be, how do we do that if you want to do that?
Yeah, so I guess I'd love to hear everyone's opinion on the tandem parking. Where that is not allowed, are we going to change that? Or are there contingencies or additional items you want to put in? Because we require 2 spots, and while this technically meets that, it doesn't meet the tandem. I think as long as there is adequate parking for guests within, a short walking distance, I could see some possibilities there, but I'd love to hear the rest of the council's opinion on that.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Okay.
go ahead. So
No, you go ahead. You're fine.
I was just going to say, as long as there's adequate parking numbers, and actually we exceed a lot of other cities in our requirements. So I don't mind changing the text on that one. it makes sense too on this type of situation.
But what I don't want tandem to be the norm.
Yeah, I don't either. That's where
Well, that's fine, but I'm saying this is city center, so of course things are going to be a little more stacked together. So that's why I'm like, this kind of makes sense.
on the tandem, I'd prefer that it's an exception. I'm not against it in this case. In this case, it makes more sense, but I would not want it just freely applied everywhere because it could be done really poorly.
Yeah, I think with tandem,
Go ahead.
with tandem, I think I would need it written in, and I think he's actually meeting it here. That with tandem, there must be
guest spaces nearby.
Spaces nearby that are not assigned to someone else, because you are going to have people coming in and going, and they're going to park wherever is convenient. And we really need to make sure that we can make this well labeled that, hey, this is a location that is reserved and there's guest parking over here.
What if we do that for just the city center area of the text in the ordinance?
Just allow tandem in the city center area?
Yeah, for mixed use. Because kind of like we did it for other things for mixed use, you know, our city center has certain adjustments.
We do have a town center overlay, but it only covers half of the property.
That's not going to work.
Okay, all right then.
That's not gonna work.
Fine, I tried.
That's a good idea.
So I would just put in that stipulation that if you are going to do tandem, there has to be available public parking for guests that is identified. And one other thing I didn't see in the development agreement was the items for, and I just forgot what it's called, the public safety.
Oh, the CPET. Yeah.
Crime free.
Crime free.
Crime free. I did not see that in the DA. Was it in there and I missed it? I know we were going to try and add those into DAs.
I didn't see it either.
I like I said, I scanned it. I just didn't notice it.
It's right at the very end. It was added in there by Paul.
Oh, Paul.
Ta-da.
Okay, good. That's what I get for scanning through it
Good
fast.
question.
Definitely.
Thanks for clarifying.
Yep.
But we can work on kind of, if you're not worried about tandem in certain situations, we can work through that with planning commission, and then, you know, we don't have to wordsmith it right now, but
So
you just need an indication of which direction you wanted to go.
So it sounds like we're not in disagreement that tandem fits here. So that's the good news for the developer. For me, I would disagree that we should change the ordinance, because I think that the only way you protect that you make sure that the situation is right is that it would have to be an exception. So we would have to review it and agree. So I would rather make it an exception. That's just me, because I'd rather make sure that it never that we never say, gosh, why did we change that? This is totally why it was in there. We shouldn't do this.
Paul, it sounds to me like they're proposing a hybrid of what you're suggesting, a text amendment, and then maybe something in this development agreement. Do you feel uncomfortable with that?
I guess I'd need to hear more details of how that's a hybrid. I think, yeah, I'm not sure what's being proposed.
I want
the tandem.
I would not want to do exceptions, because that's how you set yourself up for getting in trouble.
Could we just do it if we do a text? So is your biggest concern then, Dave, that anybody after this that tries to do development does a tandem parking situation?
Yes.
But if we do something similar to what Jordan's saying, identifying available parking, then
My concern is that we would start having requests to apply this throughout the city. I'd hate to see like a small townhome development start saying that everything's tandem and that there's never more than a one-car garage, because those are type things that we've tried to hold true to a little nicer community. And
I mean, maybe that's a tandem. I mean, townhomes would always have tandem parking, but
yeah, except for it doesn't count. Driveways don't count as your second spot. In this case, it does. Because
Yeah.
you see, if you're a garage spot, then you have to have both covered in a home or a condo. Here, we're accepting that one is not covered as it counts. And
Well, we're making the change to the mixed use though, and if it fits for us, it fits. If it doesn't, it doesn't, right? It's
What if-
all form
not if
based.
you make it in the text, then it's always acceptable.
The text that would apply to everywhere in the whole city, but you could word the text so that it's pretty
Right.
narrowly applicable.
Right. What if we have some wordsmithing, check it out, see if that'll work, and then go? Because none of us are against it for this development. So
I like what Jordan was suggesting is in the text of the ordinance change that there has to be an allowance for additional parking other than tandem parking. There's got to be enough, whatever our quota is, that there is satellite parking for others
Yes.
coming in.
Yeah, at
Yeah,
that
so
point,
like
you,
if there's
you have to
100
exceed the two.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if there's like 136 tandem stalls, then there would be 136 stalls somewhere else in the development that could kind of make up for it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Is there any kind of stipulation that says that you're only allowed the 2 parking spots per unit? Are we concerned that there will be somebody that has, 3 or 4 cars that take up those spots?
they'd be paying for extra spots.
I mean,
I
I'm
would
not
imagine.
concerned about that, but
It's an averaging game, and with them, I mean, I can let Jerry answer too, but it's with management, sometimes they charge extra fees for more cars, and some
Yeah.
people only have 1 car, and some people might not even have a car, and some people, so
Well, and the issue with the 1 car is that tandem parking takes up 2 either way.
yeah,
Right.
that's a good point.
That's the issue that they say. Sometimes it'll normalize or equalize itself, but in tandem situations, you're assigned 2 no matter if you have 1 car or not.
Good point.
We could put in a thing that says you have to have extra bike racks.
Council,
Scooter rental.
what I hear you saying is that you're kind of in favor of the text change.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Noah, do you know what that text change is?
Narrowly worded.
Not yet,
Okay.
sort of,
Okay.
but I have enough to get us started, I think.
Can you get us to the work session with that?
Also,
Well, we
can
would
we,
go to planning commission with the text.
does that also include also the units per building as well? Please. Council, what do you think?
Well, it's not so much units per building, it's we're allowing an exception to the units per building based on the corner lot where it wraps around, because that's just something we didn't foresee. But
Well,
I'd hate to destroy the building by,
Right, but does that need a text change too?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think that has to be so narrow because that is an exceptional spot. So if we do a text change on that, I think that in the future for other developments, that would be something that wouldn't be a deal breaker for us if you have a wrapping building there.
yeah, but we'd have to make it clear that it has to be in an L shape. You just can't build a way bigger building on the corner.
Please.
That it has to be architecturally different and wrapping in an
Yeah.
a right angle
and
L,
that
whatever you
text
want to
would
call
work
it.
for anything. That would be universal. So
Agree.
Okay, thank you.
One other thing, if I can get your input, in the elevations for your first time review is 2 different options. Pitched roof or flat roof.
I like the variation.
Well, this is the same,
But-
so it'd be,
Either or.
this
The pit gives
one.
a little more height, doesn't it? And is that where we have an issue?
Personally,
The
the
one thing
first
I
one-
like about the flat one is it does have a little more variation on the first floor.
But does that roof line meet our ordinance?
Yeah,
Or
they
it's
both,
straight flat?
they
They
both
both
meet the
do?
ordinance, I believe.
the first one reminds me of Logan, where I grew up. I like it.
I
Well,
think
but-
this is getting too nitpicky. I don't know that. I mean, I think that they're both acceptable. They both are cohesive with the overall design,
That's what it
and I
is.
think that when we get that picky about saying we like this roof over that one, we're trying to legislate ugly and.
But this is-
Jerry,
it's
Jerry, float this
form-based,
to
though.
Jerry,
It's
float
form-based.
this to your people and figure out which one they would be more likely
Yeah,
to
whichever
rent.
one works, they both work for me.
But it's form based, so that's why we
Yeah.
get to comment.
I want square trees.
There you go.
Planted in
That's a tough
square
one.
holes too.
I want candy.
Noah, do you have enough to move
sir.
on? Okay.
Thanks, guys.
So
Okay.
at this point, do we need to table this? Is that what I just
Yes, I
heard?
think so. That's
Yeah.
what I understand.
I hate to table this again. I'm sorry, Jerry.
Well,
But
hey,
it
I
won't
was,
take-
This is a big project and we're finding little things we need to take care of. So we'll move forward and get it through as quick as we can. So
Well,
I appreciate the input and I think we can make it work. I did not want to lose the tandem parking because that was a whole redesign. So
I think I'm okay with that.
In
motion?
that case, I motion that we table this until we can get these code changes updated.
Okay, motion to table. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Lisa. Any further discussion?
I was just going to mention that, you know, as Jerry, we would just challenge you to obviously meet with the Walker Estates folks best you can and work through the extreme sensitivity piece. And I know you guys will do great and be able to come up with a better product because of it.
I appreciate you there. We're looking to try to meet this Friday. I'm just waiting to get it back a time from them. So thank you. Thank you, Councilman, council members.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Cassie, would you record that? I'd like to speak now to those that are still with us from our public. We'll open this up to any comment from anyone who has. If you would raise your hand again, state your name and place of residence. If you'd like to limit your comment to something new that wasn't presented before.
Doesn't look like there's any.
Okay, thank you, Dave. I'll close public comment. Council, let's do council announcements, and I'm going to just go in the order that I see you on my screen. Seth, you happen to be in slot number 1.
Okay, not a whole lot. Just want to mention that that election ballots just came out, and so just want to encourage everybody to exercise their civic duty and to research the issues that are at hand, local and beyond, and to vote.
Okay, thank you, Seth. Corinne?
I will be getting out my mosquito report here soon. It's half written. Actually, it was just a longer meeting because of the our tentative budget and such, but everything's going well there. And by the way, nobody got COVID this entire season. Nobody tested positive in their whole unit, which is pretty amazing because they have a whole bunch of young employees, and apparently that seems to be the thing right now. So they did really well preventing that. So thank you, and thank you for your help with the CARES money. That's all I have.
David?
Couple of updates with the sewer district. It does look like we're finally getting an official word that we can go forward with our alternate. It's really crazy. I went down to that meeting to hear what was going on with, and just to let you know how that all came about. They said, look, we've just never heard such a creative idea and we're really for it, but they just never got around to actually approving it. And I think that they finally have. So that's going to save us as taxpayers a whole lot of money, and things are going forward. So
the alternative is the south side of the causeway, right?
If it were the south side of the causeway, the alternative is we would have to install about $200 million of new equipment to change the way that we process. By moving it to the north side of the causeway, the element that we would be required to filter out actually benefits Gilbert Bay, where it does not benefit Farmington Bay.
Okay. All right. Okay. Lisa?
Yeah. So I attended a youth commission training that was put on by the USU Extension Services in connection with 4-H. It's a grant that I applied for with permission from the mayor, and we received it. So this will include training for our advisors as well as our youth council members, training every year, twice a year. The first one of the year is canceled because, yeah, big surprise. But but the next one they expect to have come heck or high water. So learned some great things there, and they are going to be a great support to our council. And so that was this weekend. The chamber, our West Davis Chamber of Commerce, has worked in tandem with some of our CARES Act money and trying to help facilitate more business coming into our Syracuse businesses. They've had yard signs made up, some social media help that our businesses can apply for, and signs put out that says, yes, we're open. If you've seen any of those, that's thanks to great efforts by our chamber. Let me see. And I just wanted to mention that Sarah Fry, that we were attending her parade earlier today, she has made a great impact on not just our city and our state even, but the country as well as outside of the country. And people connected to her are being contacted regularly to bring about some legislation, as well as just empowering people about drunk driving and the impacts of it. And so I just thought I wanted to shout out that some tremendous good can come from really great people, and a lot of community support and rallying around this family, and this family impacting people everywhere. That's a great, it's just something I wanted to mention. And I'm just grateful for these people in the community who've shown so much support, and the family that has done so much to reach out to people. And then one last thing I wanted to say to the citizens who are impacted by all of these possible developments: we absolutely listen to you. Sometimes hard decisions have to be made that impact all of us, and there is never a time that we take it lightly, or that we dismiss you out of hand. There are definitely some decisions that are made that we wish we didn't have to make, or that we wish didn't have to impact anybody negatively or otherwise. But I just want you to know that we do listen to you. I do listen to you, and I know the others do as well. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Lisa. Jordan?
All right, so a couple notes. First of all, in case you haven't been on Facebook lately, Halloween appears to still be on in Syracuse, the naturally COVID-friendly holiday where we have masks generally are already worn. We do ask you to put a little bit more filtration on those, as you're all aware. So, but along with that, we have the Pumpkin Walk coming up October 22nd through the 24th. And we actually need people to carve pumpkins. With all of the social distancing, we're not getting as many volunteers as we usually have. So please, if you're within the sound of my voice, it's pumpkin carving time, or at least it will be on the 16th when you'd be picking those up. Please, we want to see your artistic ability. We want to see all of the Batman pumpkins and the BYU and Utah pumpkins. And if you have some artistic ability, we'd love to see your intricate shading of awesome designs. This is a huge thing that really, I think our community desperately needs. One thing to note, it is moving this year. Since Founders Park is still under construction, it'll be at Centennial Park. So please make note of that change. Masks are still required there, as well as social distancing guidelines. So obviously with your family, you can stand close, but if you're, please be respectful of the other people there. So I'm excited for Halloween. I love this holiday. I love the decorations. And let's make this great for the kids, because we've had a rough year, but so have they. This will be great. The other item I would like to bring out is we were able to take a tour of our local landfill. That is always a pleasure. One thing I found as we were there, and I'll be actually putting some more information out about this, is I'm happy to report that a large portion of Syracuse is already recycling, whether you put it in a recycling bin or not. So they have a new machine that looks like something out of a Dr. Seuss book called am I saying this right? The MRF?
MRF.
The MRF, and I will let the mayor tell you what that means shortly. But really what that comes down to is it sorts, I want to say 50% is the number I heard of. That's their capacity so far. They're increasing that, but 50% of all of the waste that comes in the trash cans is actually being sorted and recycled. So I'm proud to say that Syracuse now has a recycling program, and you don't have to contract with all the extra companies and have 4 extra cans. So kudos to them for putting that together. It's a great piece of machinery. As an engineer, I was very impressed by the ingenuity that went into some of the sorting methods. And sometimes it's just simple as a magnet. So kudos to them. The other thing I have is, I'm not sure if it's the same throughout all the rest of the elementary schools, but Syracuse Elementary specifically, their community council is, they haven't had very many volunteers. I would like to encourage all of you to get out and participate in the community. I know COVID is tough. They're doing Zoom meetings and trying to facilitate that. But the best thing you can do in a community if you want to make an impact is to get involved. Look for ways to volunteer. It's through volunteer and efforts and opinions of the citizens that we can really make this community great. This is how we build the community, is by getting out and working together with each other to come up with some common sense and sometimes innovative solutions that perhaps on a small committee they wouldn't think of all of that. So get out and volunteer. Look for opportunities in your schools, in the pumpkins, whatever it may be. Find ways to take care of each other. And that's everything I have.
Thank you, Jordan. MRF is an acronym that stands for Materials Recycling Facility.
Well, that was easy.
Yeah, that's easy. That's easy. And it is good to know that we're now recycling in the city. The only thing I have to say, Council, is I was exposed to COVID by a grandson last week, and I have spent some time in quarantine. Happy to report that I am COVID negative. But Jane and I were kind of quarantined for a period of time. Chief Byington, that's why I haven't responded to you. I wasn't sure whether I would be infected or not, but I am not, and I'll be back in contact with you to meet with the 3 crews that are servicing in our fire department. So I'd rather come to you clean than dirty, and I'm glad I'm not dirty. So that's all I've got, Brody. Do you want to fill us in? You saw the manager's report went out?
Yes, manager's report is already out. You can take a look at that for updates. Other than that, today we got a update from Governor Herbert on possible restrictions that are changing regarding COVID-19. As we digest their kind of new program that they're rolling out, we will be looking at our management document on COVID-19, and there may be some impacts on that, maybe some impacts on our services. We'll let you know as we get deeper into it.
Is that it?
And that'll be it. Yeah.
Okay. Who wants to go home? Who is home and wants to go to bed? I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion for Corinne. Second.
Second.
Second by Jordan. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We stand adjourned. See you in 2 weeks.
Thanks.